Item number 19 pertains to the 68th Street, Indian School Road to Thomas Road Construction Bid Award. And our presenter is Ms. Timku, and we have staff available as well. And for the record, I have several dozen people who wish to speak, so we will take public comment with 2 minutes. So if you can prepare 2 minutes, that would be appreciated, or less. Anyway, thank you. And also, we do have quite a bit on record in emails. And if someone wishes to submit a comment, there's a card, so they don't need to speak, but that's also available should you decide to make a written comment tonight. So please proceed. Thank you.
Okay, good evening again, Mayor, members of Council, Allison Timku, City Engineer. The item before you is item number 19. It's the 68th Street, Indian School Road to Thomas Road Construction Bid Award. We're requesting to adopt resolution number 12733 to authorize the construction bid award with AJP Electric in the amount of $1,455,768.10 for the construction of this project. In addition, the acceptance of a federal grant awards, several grant awards in the amount of $615,243 in the congestion mitigation air quality funds, $286,844 in the congestion management air quality funds, and $583,849 in the transportation alternative funds, for a total of $1,485,936. Additionally, the payment of the local contribution required, which would be $89,819 with transportation sales tax, and a fiscal year 22-23 transportation fund capital contingency budget appropriation transfer of up to $92,159 to the 68th Street Indian School Road to Thomas CIP project to be funded by the transportation sales tax. One thing to note, and I know we had a question on this, the contractor is AJP Electric, and I know there were some questions that maybe they were electrical contractor. They actually are an electrical contractor, but they're also a general contractor, and they are registered with the Arizona Registrar of Contractors, and they do have the appropriate licensure to do this type of a project. They have done projects like this for the city in the past, most recently the McDowell Road Bike Lanes project, and then a few years ago, the Thomas and Hayden Road intersection improvement projects. Additionally, being a federally funded project, it again was a low bid project. And working with AJP in the past, they do actually have a lot of experience with federally funded projects, which really kind of is a special niche because there's a lot of special requirements with the federal funds as far as like reporting and things like that. So, okay, next slide, let's see. Okay, so this project actually, this section of 68th Street has gaps in the bike lanes. The section to the north and the south both have bike lanes. This section is 2 lanes of traffic in each direction, and the section to the north and south are 1 lane of traffic in each direction. So essentially, we're just reconfiguring the roadway to align with the rest of the corridor. So the construction project includes slurry seal and restriping of 68th Street to remove travel lanes and add bike lanes. The existing exterior, the outside curb and sidewalk are to remain. So all the work is just done within the roadway with asphalt work and striping. We are actually also reconfiguring some of the existing center medians only to accommodate 2-way left turn lanes in the area. We'll also be constructing rectangular rapid flashing beacon and marked crosswalks at 2 locations, the intersection of 68th Street and Avalon Drive, and the intersection of 68th Street and 2nd Street. We'll also be doing signal modifications, ADA ramp replacements, and the right turn lanes at Osborne and Thomas Road. So this shows the section between Indian School Road and Osborne Road. It shows a plan view and a cross section of the before and after. So if you look at the before plan view, you can see in this section, this area has on-street parking, It has 2 lanes of travel in each direction, and this section does have raised medians. In the after condition, we will be maintaining the on-street parking, we'll be adding a bike lane, we'll be reducing 1 travel lane in each direction. The existing sidewalk and curbs will remain, and again, there will be some median work in the center just to accommodate where we need to make the 2-way left turns. This is the next section. This is 68th Street between Osborne Road and Thomas, and in the before condition, we have 2 lanes in each direction with the 2-way left center turn. And then in the after condition, we'll have the existing curb and sidewalk remain. We'll have a buffered bike lane, so it'll be a bike lane with a 3-foot buffer, and a travel lane 1 way in each direction, and then the 2-way center left turn. Okay, so public involvement for this project. We did have an open house meeting that was held on December 5th of 2022, and it was in conjunction with the Thomas Road project. We did send out invitation flyers, postcards, to over 5,900 homes and businesses. We had 45 people in attendance at the open house, which incidentally, post-COVID, that's the most attended public meeting that the Capital Project Management Division has had to date. We received 13 comments at the open house, and then at the time that I prepared this presentation on March 14th, we had received 58 comments via the project webpage, and since then we've received several more, so now we've had 72 comments on our project website, and the majority are overwhelmingly in favor of the project. We also made 3 project updates, which were made to the Southwest Village Neighborhood Association. We did one in the fall of 2019. We did a second one in the fall of 2021, and then we did a final one in October of 2022. So according to the president of that board, they usually have around 60 people in attendance at that meeting. And then additionally, that same board had sent a letter to council recently representing their 350 homeowners and 500 residents that they were in support of this project, and they are the closest residents to this project. And then with that, Mark Melnichenko, who is our Transportation and Street Director, is here as well, and he can talk more to the project as it relates to the TAP and the need of the project.
Thank you.
And just before you start, we really appreciate it. Just to let you know, after this presentation, we'll go into public comment, and then should any questions arise due to public comment, we would be calling you back, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. I'd like to expand on Allison's excellent presentation by providing some additional information on how this project links to the Transportation Action Plan, the thought process behind this and similar projects, as well as examples of successful, comparable design features implemented throughout the city. The city's TAP is a 10-year roadmap for the city with 5 elements, including streets, bikeways, pathways, transit, and pedestrians. Because we only have a small amount of our lane miles in the city still to build, it is important that we emphasize maintaining and refining what we have and safe and livable streets over moving traffic quickly through the city. The 68th Street Active Transportation Corridor from Continental to Jackrabbit is included in this adopted plan. And during the public outreach process for the TAP, as you can see in this chart, 68% of residents agreed that Scottsdale should emphasize pedestrian safety and multimodal travel over vehicle speed. In addition, 62% of participants also agreed with removing travel lanes on streets with excess capacity to provide a stronger active transportation system. This graphic depicts our north-south corridors as well as our project study area. As you can see, arterials, shown in orange, emphasize vehicle travel, and collector streets in blue provide a more comfortable environment for pedestrians and cyclists. The remaining 1 mile gap to be addressed in the bicycle network is shown in yellow. So you can really see that our corridors are nearly complete. We're missing this 1 mile section to complete the network in this portion of the city. In our transportation projects, such as 68th Street, staff effectively utilizes the right-of-way to build consistent roadways, fill in system gaps, and implements improvements that provide safety and travel options. All solutions are data-driven and combine resources to fully complete travel corridors. This is a set of ways that we gather data. You can see the pavement vehicle that measures our pavement condition, our traffic management center at the North Courtyard. We have a bicycle counter that's near the canal, Arizona Canal, and then the City of Scottsdale 2020 Bicycle and Pedestrian Collision Report that we do every 2 years that staff puts together. So really everything that we do, all our solutions are driven by this data. Shown on this slide are our data. These are our 5 proven Federal Highway Administration safety methods used in this project. In the following slides, I will show some examples of each of these features that are implemented in the city. These are all very successful, and these are implemented as part of the project. First, in 2020, we reclassified a portion of Indian School Road from 60th Street to Goldwater Boulevard from 6 lanes to 4 lanes to create a fully consistent roadway throughout the city. We also modified the Goldwater intersection, narrowed the lanes to our standard 11 feet, and implemented buffered bike lanes for improved safety. This work was also done in conjunction with our paving program, and also when we provide buffered bike lanes, it also adds additional safety and buffering for pedestrians in these corridors. For this corridor, 86th Street, we received from the community a number of issues regarding speeding. There was actually even a crash in a person's backyard through a block wall. We looked at various kind of tools in the toolbox, and this is an example of where we put in bicycle lanes, we narrowed the street, and we've only heard good things from the public in that area on how the street is tamed. So these are 2 examples. Again, on 68th Street, we're going to be narrowing lanes to our standard 11 feet, and it also provides buffers. The bike lanes and the buffering for bikes also provide a safety haven for pedestrians along that corridor. On 68th Street, we'll also be providing 2 rectangular rapid flashing beacons, one at Avalon and one at 2nd Street. These are examples throughout Scottsdale, 6 that we have implemented, and then 7 that are in planning stages. So it is a feature that has been very successful that we've implemented throughout the city. And when we talk about the 68th Street project, yes, it's bike lanes, it's pedestrian improvements, but we're also making significant improvements for auto use. As Allison talked about, we have new right turn lanes and left turn bays to improve traffic flow and safety. Most of the on-street parking is preserved. Buses, our trolley system stopping to pick up passengers will be outside of the travel lanes. Drivers don't need to share the travel lane with cyclists who currently must take the lane when biking. And then we're also providing a pavement treatment that will be beneficial to all. I won't go too much further on these two were shown previously. And then would just like to finish the presentation again with this graphic, which is very telling. We're looking to complete this roadway, the final mile of 5 miles in this corridor, and create a very strong, complete pedestrian and bicycle street that is, as I said, part of our transportation action plan. This is a video that we took on 68th Street at 5:30 in the afternoon on a spring training game day, and you can kind of see the traffic that is located on 68th Street. This is a southbound direction. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we will open to public comment, and I will read 3 names at a time. Please state your place of address, and then you have 2 minutes. Julie Urias, and then Harold Back, and then Alex McLaren. Julie, hello. Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Julie Urias. I live at 6540 East 2nd Street, which is in the Southwest Village neighborhood. I'm currently the president of the Southwest Village Neighborhood Association. I'm here today representing our 350 homeowners and approximately 500 voters and taxpayers. We are very proud of our Old Town single-family residential community and the revitalization that has occurred in our neighborhood. Our residents include active retirees, individuals, and young families. Contrary to what opponents of this project would like you to believe, we do walk bicycles and we push strollers into Old Town. This is one of the main reasons many of us purchased homes along the 68th Street corridor. We are committed to living in Old Town and supporting Old Town businesses all 12 months of the year. I'm here today asking you to approve the 68th Street restriping and pedestrian safety project. Some of our residents live directly on 68th Street. They've witnessed multiple accidents, including a pedestrian fatality. In this 1-mile segment, cars are taking advantage of the double lanes. They speed past other vehicles, they dodge around vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians. This public safety project has been under development for several years, and for the past 4 years, our neighborhood association has met with the project members, the individuals that represent all of you, and we've given them input, and they have sought input from us. After reviewing the final changes, our entire board and an overwhelming majority of our residents support this plan. For those that are concerned about rapidly commuting through Old Town, there are options. They're very nearby. Goldwater, 64th Street, and Scottsdale Road are all good examples. Keep in mind that for every individual or family that's able to safely walk or bike into Old Town, another parking spot is available for our residents from North Scottsdale to come in and enjoy and support the Old Town activities and businesses. The members of our community thank all of you for the work you've done to create such a vibrant and thriving Old Town, and for painting a vision of the future that emphasizes walkability and bikeability. We urge you to demonstrate the support by approving the 68th Street project funding. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have Harold.
Mr. Mayor,
Excuse me?
Mr. Mayor, may I ask Julie a question?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Julie, thank you so much for being here, and I'll keep this very brief. Thank you for serving as president of the Southwest Village Neighborhood Association. We were talking briefly before the meeting, and if we broke down this project into the turn lanes, the lane elimination, and the crosswalks or the hawks, what would you say your members give the most priority to?
Well, all three, to be honest. The pedestrian crossing is extremely important for us
Okay.
to be able to get across 68th, followed by the ability for people to turn on and off of 68th Street
Okay.
so that they can do that safely and not have to dodge around other vehicles.
Okay, so you're saying the crosswalks, the hawks would be the most important, and then the turn lanes, and then the lane reduction. So if it wasn't an all or nothing, that's what your choice would be, your members?
If I had to poll them right now, I would say that would be.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here again.
Thank you. Next, we will have Harold Back, Alex McLaren, and after Alex is Andrew Berman.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the opportunity to address this group this evening. This work represents the finest work of the city staff planning for the transportation needs of our community, and it's taking account of not only pedestrians, cyclists, and automobiles, but people with special needs, pedestrian needs like myself and other people in the community. We strongly urge that this not be ignored as a component in this project. It's something not spoken about, but it is a critical element of everything that is being done with regard to transportation and transportation needs in the community. Secondly, I cannot help but comment on all the negative feedback that we have received most recently. What is striking to me is that in all those negative comments, no one has taken the time to suggest an alternative, something positive that can be applied to augment the work that has been done by city staff. We thank you very much for your effort and hope that you will favorably consider this project. It is crucially important to the community and to the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alex McLaren, then Andrew Berman, and Russell Olinsky.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is an excerpt from the Alex McLaren, 7624 East Osborne. I know this area well. I go up and down it on my bicycle regularly. I think this graphic is a good illustration of what the city is trying to do. There are the arterial streets, the orange-colored streets, which carry the traffic. And then there are the blue streets, like 68th Street, Miller, and 86th Street. Those are suitable for bicycles and pedestrians. The section, the gap on 68th Street, I'm not sure how those 2 lanes snuck in there. It must have long before my time at the city, but they were there. It doesn't make any sense in south of Thomas and north of Indian School. It's 1 lane in either direction. There is some buffer on one of the sections from south of Indian School, but the section from Osborne down to Thomas is crammed in there. There's very little room for a bicycle on that road. There's very little room even if you walking on the sidewalk. So I think narrowing the streets, making it making it more pedestrian and bicycle friendly is a good idea, and I would urge you to pass this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Andrew Berman, Russell Olinsky, and then Richard Bonura. Andrew?
All right, good evening, City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Andrew Berman. I live at 3501 North Pueblo Way. I've been a Scottsdale resident for 14 years, and my family and I live adjacent to 68th Street in Scottsdale Village. That's a great community on the western side of 68th between Indian School and Osborne, and I'm speaking in support of the 68th Street project. Every afternoon of every single day, we hear a chorus of car horns and tire squeals. Someone trying to turn left stops in traffic, angering those behind them, so they go tearing off. Someone isn't paying attention when the car in front of them stops. At the last moment, they have to slam on their brakes. There have been numerous fender benders and many more close calls. Some impacts are heartbreaking. It was mentioned a few years ago an elderly man was killed while jaywalking across all 4 lanes of 68th Street. Some impacts are crazy. A speeding drunk leaving Old Town ran into one of our neighbors' houses. In fact, looking at the most recent Scottsdale traffic volume and collision report, both sections of 68th Street under discussion exceed the Scottsdale average for collisions. The section between Osborne and Thomas is almost 3 times the city collision rate. Further, these sections also significantly see more collisions than the other segments of 68 that are already down to 1 lane in each direction. So we have the opportunity here to both save on accidents and injuries. I feel like the city's done a great job at setting up thoroughfares to get people into and out of Old Town. The improvements they've made on 64th and Goldwater Scottsdale make it so that 68th doesn't need to be a major relief valve for the Old Town area. We should improve safety and air quality by leaving 68th to the local traffic and pushing the additional traffic to Scottsdale Road and 64th. Beyond just the safety, noise, and pollution aspects, 68th is a major route for cyclists now, and many, such as the ASU cycling team that ride by nearly daily, are large groups that are spilling out into the car lanes. I'm excited that this expanded light has the opportunity to, prevent accidents and also encourage more cyclists. And then lastly, I'm sensitive to the concerns of the local businesses that are fearful that this might impact their customer flow. I myself, my family frequent those businesses. We don't want to see anybody get hurt. But it's actually for that exact reason that I think our businesses are going to be okay. In my opinion, these businesses aren't being frequented by the commuter that's leaving Scottsdale, blasting down 68th and trying to head into the Phoenix area. They're being frequented by the local community that surrounds them, and that's not going to change. We're here for them as we always have been, and we will be in the future. So in conclusion, I don't see this as an opportunity for reduction. I see this as an opportunity for an improvement of 68th and expansion of clean air rides. So thank you very much.
Okay, we have Russell Olinsky and Richard Bonora.
Dear elected officials, thank you for letting us speak. My name is Russell Olinsky. I live for 15 years near Osborne and 64th Street. Just heard last Thursday from a friend about the 2-lane reduction and the changes. Never got any notices in the mail, nor any of my immediate neighbors. And nothing was posted at the Paiute Community Center, and I go there regularly. I wondered why. We were told we need a bike path connecting the canal to Tempe. Everyone in the area was in favor. Almost all bicyclists myself use the east-west canal by Indian School and go south along the canal at 64th Street. The bike shop at Thomas and Indian School has been there for over 30 years, and they didn't know of this plan. Today, they even asked them, well, were you aware of it? Can you offer suggestions? Yes, nobody asked him for any suggestions, and he's been there for over 33 years. You would think he would have some good suggestions. The improvements made on 64th Street and the bike path by the canal is beautiful. You go up there, you wait from cars, traffic. It was a great job. This disruptive project is estimated to take 1 year. Many other projects have gone way over estimate. We know it impacts over 20 businesses and at least one may close. Yes, it meets the local fire department and police department minimum requirements, but it will have impacts and unknown and known consequences. What happens for water main breaks, buildings crack. But despite being told it will not throttle down traffic, many will avoid 68th Street and this area. They'll go on to 70th Street, 64th Street, and Scottsdale Road. We already have late night racing on 64th Street and Indian School. Pretty much every night, we have crashes probably once a week or more at the intersection of Osborne and 64th Street. This will have a negative impact. We can have better traffic enforcement for police. Anyway, I consider this project greenwash with all the wants of a few outweighing the needs of the many. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Richard and Michelle, excuse me, it's just going to slow us down. Richard and Michelle Bonora. Michelle gave her time. So Richard, you have 3 minutes, and then Marietta Strano and Margot Rosen. Richard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, council folks, I want to first start by saying that I want to thank you for your service. I have yet to experience such divisiveness or polarization on items. I'm not a political person. My greatest polarizing decision is muffin, cupcake, or cinnamon roll. There are some benefits to being the muffin man. But I do want to thank you, because this can be a very thankless job in instances like this, where you're forced to make a decision that unfortunately people have to abide by that may not always agree. But I want to talk to you tonight about some things such as, I have a unique experience with this. I've emailed you all, so you're very familiar with our story, but we went through this similarly 22 years ago, almost to the day, where we had a business, it was thriving, the city did construction, and it forced all of the people away for a period of time, and it took some time for those people to come back, and it bled us out and put us out of business. Now, I want to point out some things here, because in business, you have to be a numbers person. You have to understand your numbers. First and foremost, we are a green company. We are a green initiative. We are a vegan bakery that serves a gluten-free customer base, okay? So taking a green company that's thriving and surviving out for a green initiative is counterproductive. There does need to be a discussion between the parties, which is part of what I went out today. I went up and knocked on every business door up and down that corridor who would be affected by this, as well as the proposed changes you'll eventually make on Thomas. And with the exception of 3, every single one of them headlighted me and said, I have no idea what you're talking about. They've all signed a petition stating that they would like to be part of this conversation. You've probably received emails. They've sent that petition directly into Mr. Lane so that you can review that. But I also want to point out that we are a tourist destination. Food security for people with federal disablements that are protected by the Federal Disablement Act include autoimmune-related disease, such as celiac, folks that can have no other option for products unless they don't contain gluten. And we take great strides in making sure that they would be protected. So we are providing some of those same things. I went back, unfortunately, I had to become an expert of this very quickly, and I looked at the original deck, and the original deck in 2016 said that this was being proposed because what you thought was going to occur didn't, and you had to adjust. So the numbers in the plan changed. But now you're going to make another adjustment without considering that there may be another alternative consequence. So what I did was I went out to find out that the National Transportation Safety Board, census statistics in this country state that the percentage of pedestrians is currently 2% that actually commute that way. Bicycle riders are less than 1% that commute that way. When these same initiatives were imparted in California, the accidents increased 19% over a 12-month period compared to the previous 12 period. 22 businesses closed within a year. They also found that there was the Federal Highway and Traffic Safety Board debunks your own person's statements in the regards that they found that, yes, sir, they found this. This is from the federal. They went to cities that did this exact same thing, and this was the result. It increased delays. They had longer travel times. Rear-end crashes tripled after installation. There was increased emissions, And there was diversion from the corridor. It took up to 8 months for those businesses to get that back. So the last point I want to make is you're proposing to do construction from October to the summer. So what's going to happen is I'm going to go through the summer, the toughest part of the year, only to go through construction for basically a year, to exit into the summer for another year, and then wait 6 to 8 months for my customer base to potentially come back to visit with me. I don't know any business that can survive 30 months with that kind of situation.
Thank you, Richard. I wish we had some of your wonderful baking, and we do order there for City Hall, so happy to. But continue, please try to stay to, we're going back to 2 minutes. Marietta Strano, Margot Rosen, and Gabe Rosen. Marietta?
Thank you, council members. My name is Marietta Strano, and I live at 68th and Thomas. I walk, I bike, and I use our public transportation. I do not own a car, so just put that in perspective. Accommodating diverse mobilities, the 68th Street project prompts welcome, concerns, and recommendations for safe, accessible, connected, and convenient travel for all, which is the City of Scottsdale's statement. The project's webpage shows a lone biker on 68th Street between Thomas and Osborne with your 6-foot bike lane and 3 feet for your marked buffer. Concern? Bikers coming south on 68th Street, preparing to enter the intersection at Thomas, right-turn cars cross the biker's path and pedestrian crosswalk. This diminishes safety. Right-turn signal competes with pedestrians crossing signal. Cars, pedestrians, bicyclists, 44% of all bike collisions happen when motorists make a right turn. Recommendation? Concept of protected intersections support no right turn on red at 68th and Thomas. 68th Street low traffic volume was compared with Miller Road's higher volume. Excuse me. 68th Street differs. It has more than 15 businesses, active pedestrians, workers on break, scooters, etc. Recommendations? Please return to reviewing those statistics comparing Miller Road and 68th Street, because your statistics gave you significant input for this project. From Indian School to Thomas, the plan shows west side parking on 68th Street. The east side already has street parking. Concern? 2 obvious unsafe possibilities: driver's doors open and no physical separation between moving cars and bikes. Recommendation: limit on-street parking to specific times and days.
Thank you very much. And when you said time,
Is it time?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I have one.
Next, we go to Margot Rosen.
Thank you.
And thank you very much. Margot Rosen and Gabe Rosen, followed by Alicia Baldwin. 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for, one, allowing everybody to come and converse about and have a good discussion about a project that will be happening hopefully soon. I'm new to Scottsdale. I've been in the area for 14 years. We've been from Paradise Valley to Phoenix to Paradise Valley to Scottsdale, and I think we finally found our home. We are in the Southwest Village neighborhood, and we moved there specifically because we have teenagers who like to go out. We like to walk, we like to bike, we have a dog. So from Southwest Village, we are able to go all throughout Old Town Scottsdale, and our kids are able to do that safely. What we found is crossing 68th Street is a little bit like Frogger. For those of you who are younger or older, a terrible video game where frogs died as you tried to cross the street. It's not just the traffic. It is the traffic that speeds around. They don't abide by all the rules. We have a gap from people going the speed limit with 2 lanes, or yeah, north-south 2 lanes, to going 4 lanes, so they speed around. We also have 2 new drivers, well, 1 official new driver and 1 coming up into about 4 months. And this extra little space would really make driving a little bit safer, turning. We've had many close calls with myself, my husband, and my daughter. Our kids love to walk. We don't let them walk south on 68th Street to Cuernavaca or Begg Bakery. They can't ride their bikes. It's just not safe. We've seen cars come in and out of alleys. We see them drive too fast. And this will allow our neighborhood to utilize the businesses on the south part of 68th Street near Thomas in such a great way once it's done. So that's really all. I really feel like this will mitigate speed and help our neighborhood be part of the local businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could hold on, I have a question from Councilwoman Whitehead.
Yes.
Was that? Somebody press the button.
Oh.
What can I say? Thank you very much.
You're
and,
welcome. And
lovely.
my son Gabe is going to skip his time, so.
Good. Thank you. Next, we will go to Gabe and then Alicia Baldwin, but he's here, yes. So Gabe Rosen. No, he's skipping. He skipped it? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Gabe. Next, we have Alicia Baldwin and Tracy Howell.
Thank you for letting me address you and the audience. My name is Alicia Baldwin. I am the owner of DT Roadhouse, which is at 68th and Thomas. I'm super concerned about this project and the construction it will bring and the inability for folks to get to my business. I have people coming into the business, coming left, coming right down 68th. I have vendors bringing inventory. Based on what you just said about the Miller Roundabout project, I'm even more concerned that you're going to dig into the ground and I'm going to lose water at my business. So, you talked about improving quality of life for residents, students, visitors by making these bike lanes, but nobody addressing the business. Nowhere in that presentation was anything about the businesses that are on the 68th Street corridor. Yet you say that you foster a business-friendly climate that generates some of the world's most successful companies, but yet you're going to limit access to my business, and you're going to do construction and block off lanes. So it's just really concerning, especially when a lot of our businesses are finally recovering from COVID. Finally, after all this time, finally got our numbers back to where they were pre-COVID, and now we're at risk, like Richard said, about we're going into the summer. Summer is our slow time. I mean, we all know that. Nobody wants to be here. It's too hot, right? Nobody wants to sit on the patio at the TT Roadhouse and have a beer because it's 115 degrees. So you're limiting the traffic to coming into my business. So that's basically what
Thank you very much. Tracy Howell and Thomas Cube. And by the way, it's my understanding that no driveways will be altered, but that'll be a question, that is driveways into businesses, driveways into homes or apartments. That's off the table. That's not included in this proposal. Continue, if you will, please, Tracy.
Hi, my name is Tracy Howell, and I've lived at 3314 North 68th Street for the last 13 years. At least I thought I did, because the 68th Street I'm hearing people describe does not match the one I live on. I walk my cat on 68th Street, and that lady won't let her kid walk down 68th Street? Doesn't make sense to me. So anyway, during this time, I've seen thousands of bicycles use 68th Street without a dedicated bike lane. A parallel route exists on the canal a quarter mile away between Indian School and Thomas for those who are afraid to bike without a dedicated lane. It is disingenuous to enact a traffic diet under the guise of helping bicyclists. While the area north of Osborne on 68th may be a neighborhood street, the area below it is not. It is a vibrant area full of small businesses that would be negatively impacted by construction and reduced lanes. 68th Street is used for overflow traffic from Scottsdale Road. If speeding is a concern, why do I never see police officers on 68th Street pulling people over? At a time when the council has approved over 10,000 new apartments, it seems foolish to attempt to diet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. You're cutting
Statistically,
it very-
most diets fail. It leads to binging. Further, the cost of this project is $1.45 million for a 1-mile road, meaning the cost is $145,000 per tenth of a mile. Are we paving the road in gold? Finally, the city does not even have the full amount available and will be using taxes to finance a portion. Scottsdale, which prides itself on being America's most livable city, will be impeding on the freedom of those on 68th Street by restricting our movement and taxing us for the privilege of the tyranny. We will consider your traffic diet when you go on a building diet. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Okay. Okay, we're going to have to put that one on mute, okay? Next we go with Thomas Kube, Miriam Waltz, and Jesse Westad. I'm just going to cut the time off the next one, so please be quiet. That's what we've asked for. It lets people and respects the next speaker. Thank you, Thomas Kube.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. That's a tough act to follow. I'm Tom Kuby, a 26-year member of Scottsdale's citizenry, and I've lived at 12740 East Sunnyside Drive during that time. I speak tonight in opposition to the 68th Street project, also known as the Road Diet Traffic Calming Initiative, estimated to cost $1.6 million just to configure this mile-long stretch of road. The city staff is signaling that this is only the beginning of an aggressive agenda to eliminate car lanes and narrow roads across Scottsdale. The staff has already published a video of numerous streets slated for this type of traffic lane removal. This is a test case before you tonight, and it needs to stop now. The city is building a false narrative that 68th Street is a neighborhood street to justify the slowing of traffic. It is not that. In reality, 68th Street is a collector that connects Tempe and Scottsdale. Neighborhood roads are intended to serve residential areas. Collector roads funnel traffic from neighborhoods to busier arterial roads. City staff have admitted that this road diet is meant to divert traffic to other streets in the area. Why would you create traffic bottlenecks on a road used by drivers to bypass the traffic backup on Scottsdale Road, for example? That makes no sense. With over 10,000 new apartments in the pipeline, which were just mentioned, the city should be improving roads to make room for the 20,000 or so new cars that are going to be coming here, not narrowing them. The city should use those funds to maintain and repair our deteriorating roads and adding traffic lanes to accommodate all these new residents. I personally become on a first-name basis with potholes on Shea, on Via Linda, and other roads that I've lived with for years. That, we talk to each other. The proposal is also being packaged as a bike-friendly project, when in reality, this is the beginning of an anti-car initiative in Scottsdale. So I ask you to vote no, and I thank you for your time.
Excuse me. Miriam Waltz, Jesse Westad, and Joseph. I'll be looking for noisemakers, okay? You got it? Okay. You're very close to the door there. Miriam Waltz and Jesse Westad.
Hi, I'm Miriam Waltz, and again, like everybody else, thank you so much for everybody being here tonight, and thank you for listening to this. I was so excited when I heard about the 68th Street project. I've lived in Scottsdale. I was in Old Town for a long time. Now I'm more close to 60th Street, so I pass through the neighborhoods all the time. I'm a biker, I'm a driver, and I'm a walker. And almost all of, I live at 60th, but almost all my life is over in Old Town. So that's what I do like all day long. I'm going back and forth. All of my business, all my packages and my mail come to the UPS store. I shop at Sprouts. I do my yoga at CA Bar Yoga. I go to the library. That's just where I am. So 68th Street is right in the middle of my life. And again, I'm all three. I'm a driver, I'm a biker, and I'm a walker. And I use the canal as exercise. I use biking for exercise, but also because it's my little part to do for air quality. It's like, well, if I can bike, then I'm not polluting more and making the air situation worse. So 68th Street is the most dangerous place for me to cross, to get through. When they were doing all the canal work this summer and you couldn't even go on the canal, then it was like, oh my God, I hope I don't have to go on 68th Street because, you know, that's not where I want to be. And even when the traffic is really bad and you don't just some of the big events that go on, just as an alternative to get there, 68th Street becomes really important. So I guess my comment for tonight is that, you know, the future is all sorts of modes of transportation. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. And as the city does get more congested and as we get more people here, we're all going to have to share the road because the bikers aren't going away. Hopefully the walkers aren't going away. And of course, I'm driving. I mean, I drove tonight. It's raining. I'm not going to ride my bike. So we just have to figure out a way to all share the road. And although I'm not familiar with all the details, you know, this sounds like a way where we can all share and we can all do it safely. So
Thank you.
I hope you support the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Jesse Wested, Joseph Starbuck, and then we will have Craig Weber. So, Jesse.
My name is Jesse Wested. I live at 8347 East Mackenzie Drive, basically like any school, Granite Reef. I first moved to Scottsdale when I got out of the Army. I was down at Fort Huachuca for 6.5 years, spent a deployment while I was there. Grew up as an Army brat, got to live all over the world, got to live in Germany, got to experience what that freedom was like to be on a Huffy bike and just be able to access everything. And then my family moved to Colorado Springs, and then all of a sudden in junior high, I've got like zero freedom because your bike can only get you so far. And then even worse, I went to Iowa, and then there's like zero bike ability. So at least I have my little Ford Ranger, I hit 16, and I could get around. But I know there's some stats that were thrown out before where it's, you know, across the U.S., you know, this amount of people commute by, you know, walking or by biking. Well, I think that kind of determines on the community that you live in. I live in Scottsdale. I can take my e-bike everywhere I go. When my office was down on Mill Avenue, I could take my e-bike all the way down the Greenbelt, shoot there in 25 minutes. 25 minutes is the same as it takes my F-150 to get down there. So if I'm on the Greenbelt, you can't be mad when you're on your e-bike. You just smile. When I'm in my F-150, I'm just pissed off at the world. So you get on the Greenbelt, you're like, hey, Mrs. Jenkins, hey, Mrs. Johnson, hey, that's a cute dog. You can't do that in your car. Think about that. When's the last time you're happy driving around here? I'm never happy about that. So when we're looking at this, we're just trying to find different avenues for us to move around the city and get there, you know, in one piece. My wife, our favorite bike spot is that one that's right there on 68th Street in Indian School. We rode it one time. She's like, I'm never riding this again. But she's happy to be on the Greenbelt. So you got to look at what is the way to get around safely. When I'm in my F-150, I never think about, like, what's the safest way where I don't die on the way there? If I'm taking my bike, I do. I think about what time of day it's going to be. Is it going to be nighttime when I get back? I love TT Roadhouse, and I don't booze cruise. I booze cruise on my bike. So, like, if there's a safe way to get to TT Roadhouse now, hell yeah, I'm in for it. So that's all I got to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, Joseph Starbuck, Craig Weber, and Craig Citizen.
Good evening. I live right around the corner here at 7520 East 2nd Street. Just moved here last year, and my family's a single-car household, and we have been for 3 years, and it's honestly been awesome. We have a 1-year-old son, and we moved here specifically to this part of Scottsdale so that we could have accessibility and so that we wouldn't have to drive everywhere. And so what we look for is obviously safety, but also convenience and comfort. I mean, it does get hot here, so we want, you know, wide sidewalks and places to walk and, you know, have convenient access. And that's what we're talking about here is complete streets, by definition, are safe, convenient, comfortable access for all ages and abilities, regardless of that mode of transportation. And we're not trying to get rid of anything. We're just trying to provide equal access for all different types of transportation. And I think as Mark said in the presentation that the case studies have proved to tame these roadways, which is exactly what I'm looking for my family. And I'm in support of this project and all future projects like this where we can continue to use all modes of transportation around the city safely and comfortably. I mean, I'd love for my son to grow up in an accessible city where he can safely travel around and I don't have to worry about that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Craig Weber and Craig Citizen, then Matthew Jordan Pfeiffer. Craig Weber.
I'm Craig Weber, also at 7520, just down the street here. I'm here to show support today for these improvements. As we've discussed plenty in the last half an hour, this project is really just connecting two disjointed segments right now, and that's really what it boils down to me. It's just connecting these two amenities that we already have. Cars have already adjusted to one lane of traffic north of Indian School and south of Thomas, and I have complete faith that they will be able to adjust to one lane of traffic in this new segment. Now, expanding these bicycle and pedestrian-oriented infrastructure opportunities, it seems to me that it's really a commitment to the citizens that we have now and the citizens that are already growing up here, and providing them with alternative forms of transportation and ways to get out and experience our city in safer ways. It's kind of a promise that we can make as a city, as residents, by supporting this. That gives us a chance to allow people to slow down and appreciate some of the neighborhoods that strengthen the fabric of Scottsdale and really support, what I see in my mind when I think of Scottsdale, this idyllic western town where people are on their front porches, talking to pedestrians going by, waving at bicycle commuters, people that they don't even know. It creates a sense of community, and that's something that I think we need to support. Now, completing this improvement project isn't going to make somebody who wants to drive not drive. They're still going to make that route or make that trip in their car. But what it does do is it provides a safe alternative for people like me and people with families like me to get around and experience new parts of this city. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Craig Citizen.
Thank you, Council, for your time. Thank you, everybody. I live on 68th Street in Cherry Lynn, and I'm a little taller than this thing, so I'll try to speak into it. I've been on 68th Street in Cherry Lynn for about a decade, and I can tell you, just a little over a decade, and I can tell you as a 42-year-old, 250-pound male that I do not feel safe walking on that street. I am completely for the bike lanes or whatever makes our neighborhood safer. I watched the YouTube video, the shockumentary video, that referred to 68th Street as not a neighborhood street, but a collector street. And to be honest, that's pretty offensive to me because it's my neighborhood. That's where I live. I mean, I see you. Some of you don't live. I walk around there all the time. And I would never come to Choya or Yucca or any other neighborhood and ask you to expand the streets that you live in where your kids, your families, your elderly, your pets work. I had a dog hit on 68th Street by a car going so fast that the dog bounced off the tire, right? 30 miles over the speed limit is pretty frequent. I mean, I've done it before, right? If you make a right turn onto my street, you have to slow down because you're afraid somebody's going to hit you from behind. So, again, I take offense to that. There's a school bus stop in front of the Circle K that every day about 30 to 40 kids get out of. And I understand that some people, that may not want this because it affects their business, but I don't really care about that as much as I care about my neighbor's children. This should be a no-brainer for our community. It's 1 mile, a little over a mile, and nowhere else on 68th Street is like this. It's Mad Max Thunderdome. Anybody that stands out there can see it, and maybe one person isn't afraid, but the majority of us, I think, that live in that neighborhood for a long time will tell you that it's not safe. I don't ride my bike on there ever. And I'm a cyclist, right? So please, I ask you, if you don't live in the neighborhood, maybe it's not your thing to talk about, right? Makes sense? Thank you.
Next, we have Next, we have Craig Jordan Pfeiffer, Linda Milhaven, Patricia Badnock. Matthew Jordan, Pfeiffer, and then Linda Milhaven, Patricia Badnock. Matthew Jordan.
Hi. Okay, I've been here in Arizona for 25 years of my 31 years of life, and I have been bicycling around everywhere since I was 12 years old. And I know that most cyclists route out a safe and easy way to get across town. And the stretch between Thomas and Osborne, or an Indian School, sorry, is such a small stretch that any bicyclist could easily divert their route around it in any collector street. The picture that was shown does not show any of the other collector streets beyond 68th Street, correct? And so I know, sorry, let me get my head up a little bit. The Greenbelt was a huge example. There is such an easy way to get around town that you don't need to potentially risk the harm of shutting down all of these great businesses like TT's Roadhouse, Taco Jalisco, Beg Bakery, all these local mom and pop shops. TT Roadhouse is a landmark. There's no way to risk the shutting down of these 6 small businesses just to create a path where any smart bicyclist will just be able to divert themselves around it. I knew how to get anywhere I wanted to get on a bike when I was 12 years old, and I was traveling between Fountain Hills all the way down Mill Avenue, all the way down. I took Greenbelt. I knew where I wanted to go, and I was 11 years old. If any 30, 40, I mean, this just sounds like people who haven't lived here long enough to know how to divert. Also, every argument seems to be based on speeding. Just put speed limiters there. Every once in a while you put a speed limiter on Miller, right outside the school right there, on Miller and Roosevelt. Why not do that on 68th Street? There's just so much more you could do than to, I mean, accidents happen everywhere. What is to say that, oh, an accident happens here? Do you get what I'm trying to say here? Like, I don't.
Hey, thank you very much.
I don't understand.
And next, we're going to Linda Milhaven, Patricia Badnock, and Virginia Ginny Bertoncino. So we have Linda Milhaven, Patricia Badnock, and Ginny.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Linda Milhaven. I live on Belgian Trail in Scottsdale, and I think the neighbors have done a wonderful job advocating for the wonderful elements of this project, so I'd like to just make a few additional points. First, our city has a long and strong legacy of looking forward and planning for the future. Today, our enviable quality of life is due to the foresight and long-range planning of past leaders and staff planners, and today that tradition continues. Second, as we've seen tonight, street planning is more science than art. There are some who are concerned about this project and that it may impede traffic flow. However, the goal of our street planners is to facilitate traffic flow, not erode it, and in fact, their jobs depend on it. Planners take new housing units and other contemplated future events into consideration as they plan our roadways to serve us in the future. In fact, the general plan is the foundation of such planning. I know that staff can provide you, if they have not already, with historical and projected traffic patterns, traffic counts, as well as the information they use to predict future traffic flows and support this project. Next, as was noted, 68th Street runs continuously from Continental to Jackrabbit. This is the only 4-lane segment, and yet the rest of 68th Street seems to serve adequately. Finally, there are those who believe that the recommendation to reduce lanes is a plot to make traffic so unbearable that we'll be forced out of our cars and onto bicycles. This is a false premise. Instead, adding bicycle lanes supports those who choose to bicycle and aids in the flow of traffic and safety. As the staff report says, this project will make a series of improvements with the goal of improving safety, connectivity, and the quality of life for our residents, students, and visitors. The project will add bike lanes, pedestrian improvements, turn bays, and intersection improvements. I hope you will keep this in mind and approve this project. Thank you.
Next, Patricia Badnock and Ginny Bertuccino, and then Bob Pedgman. Patty?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Patty Badnock, 47 resident. I've heard there's about over 300 pages of emails against this project. First of all, calling the Indian School Road to Thomas Road Improvement Plan is a misnomer. Taking further ability away from cars to drive on streets is hardly an improvement to accommodate bikes. Not even clever, but clearly a transparent reason to further set aside us up for a more conglomerate city. The citizens of Scottsdale got rid of some of these council people who were noted in saying refuse the light rail system. Then we will create the problem of congesting streets to force the solution of mass transit. In spite of our efforts, you're on your way. This narrowing of streets is just another means to build more density projects that Scottsdale was never meant to accommodate. I would rather see the $92,159,000 transportation sales tax spent on fixing some of these streets. Some of these roads have become so rutted it's like driving in a covered wagon on a dirt road. Thank you.
Next, we have Ginny Bertuccino, and Bob Pedgman, and James Haxby.
Thank you, Mayor. Scottsdale City Council has approved thousands of new apartments in the last several months and years, 10,000 of which are still in the pipeline. We need wider streets, not narrower streets. We live in a desert. A very small percentage of residents going to work, walk to a bus stop, or ride their bike to work, especially in the summer sweltering heat. Scottsdale has not only one of the best bike path systems in the valley, but also in the entire United States. Bicyclists have easy access to our greenbelt paths as well as canal banks. We know that 68th Street is just the beginning. Narrowing Sweetwater between 94th and 96th Streets is one thing. It's a short stretch that is not a major thoroughfare. However, 68th Street between Thomas and Indian School is a major thoroughfare. It's dangerous to narrow a major thoroughfare between Scottsdale and Tempe. We've already talked about what happened with the roundabout, and Congresswoman Janik and Congressman Graham addressed that situation. It's a fiasco that has skyrocketed in cost. If this were done under private means, somebody would have been fired. You're well aware that the federal grant does have strings attached. We know that the federal government is attempting to make roads less friendly in hopes of saving the planet through its climate change advocacy. However, narrowing roads in many cities across the United States has proved a huge mistake. Scottsdale will be no exception. Please, council members, do not be derelict in your duties. We must bring sanity back to City Hall. Please stop spending time and money on projects that hurt our quality of life. And looking back at the video that the gentleman showed us at 5:30, I'd have to see it again, but I didn't see many pedestrians or bicyclists in it.
Bob Pedgman and James Haxby. Next, we have French Thompson. So we have Bob Pedgman, James Haxby, French.
Thank you, Mayor. Taking council members. For the record, I'm planning to move to this neighborhood because it's so close to my business, and I'm still against it. There are two false narratives that are used to push this project. One is that it is a neighborhood street, and two is that everybody in the neighborhood is asking for it. Well, this morning, that everybody's asking for it got debunked. There were 22 merchants that were approached to sign a petition that didn't even know about this. they're opposed to it. So not everybody's for it. As far as 68th Street being a neighborhood street, 68th Street goes from Chaparral all the way down to Tempe. Supposedly 8,000 cars a day, they use it. What kind of neighborhood street goes 5 miles with 8,000 cars using it? It's another street that takes the pressure off of Scottsdale Road and 64th and the other up and down streets. Also, I want to point your attention to the fact that we have 10,000 apartments still in the pipeline, either under construction or not built yet. About half of them are in Old Town and in South Scottsdale. And the density of 85251 is double the density of most other zip codes. So why would you want to remove or narrow down any road knowing that it's the densest area and more density is coming? I mean, that's a sure thing. Council got about 500 pages of emails, mostly against this. So when I hear staff saying that, oh, they got all this positive input, put those emails also next to them. But here's what I would say. This project is so controversial that, frankly, it needs to be put on a ballot. You know, this has been done in different cities that they put this on the ballot. There are 3 members of the council here right now that were activists that pushed a petition or an initiative to put commercial development on the preserve on a ballot. I think maybe you should do what you were doing yourself as activists now, since you're on the council, and put this on the ballot. Not just 68th, but put road diets on a ballot.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Mr. Pitchman.
And by the way, to Mr. Beck, we have positive ideas. They should build the sidewalks on your stretch.
Thank you. Next, we have James Haxby, French Thompson, Veronica Cochran. So, you know, I have another full page, so let's please be precise and move it along. James Haxby, French Thompson, Veronica Cochran.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. Jim Haxby, 7336 East Sunnyside Drive. And when I first read this proposal, it come up this is a scheme. It's a scheme for the city to get $1.5 million of federal funds so we don't have to use transportation funds for this road on there to get the majority of it. So, and the funds come out of congestion mitigation or congestion management. Now, when you remove a lane that people are driving on, that traffic's got to go someplace. If it's down from 2 lanes to 1 lane, that road's going to be more congested. If that traffic that moves out of that lane moves over to Scottsdale Road, it's going to be more congested. That's not congested mitigation. My other concern is when we do this, there will be some extended time for first responders to respond to this area. It might only be a minute, might be 2 minutes, but a lot of times that minute counts. I went down to 68th Street and kind of cruised around, looked at it, talked to several people, and I didn't bump into one person that knew about this, and I really think that the community outreach was maybe lacking on what needs to be done down here. And the other thing I was talking to my sister from over in San Diego, and they did this in her neighborhood, and it did increase accidents. And now they're reversing it, and I thought, well, gee, if we're reversing it, we took $1.5 million of some federal funds or some other funds to build this, and if we got to reverse it, we're going to have to dig the money out of our own pocket. We're not going to be able to go back to the feds and say, oops, we made a mistake. So I really think that there's benefits in this thing, that we ought to look for alternatives, maybe a wider easement to put the whole thing in there, keep the lanes, look for other
Thank you, Mr. Haxby. Jim, appreciate it.
All right.
Next, we've got French Thompson, Veronica Cochran, and Kenneth Wang. So I've got French Thompson, Veronica Cochran. Hello.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Wow, what another controversy. I love it. I love this city, but I'll tell you what, this isn't a very good idea. I ride my bicycle on 68th Street. To be perfectly honest, that's the safest section. That 1 mile is the safest section to be on a bicycle because there's 2 lanes and the cars can actually move over into a lane to get around you. But if you do that and the other 4 miles of that, you're actually going illegally into a section of the road that you're not supposed to drive on, that median section. That's against the law to just drive on that. So when I ride my bicycle up there and I hit Thomas going north, I go, finally, I'm in a safer area. This is really the truth. I'm not making it up. I finally say, wow, this is safe now to ride because the road is a lot wider. The traffic can go around me. I would prefer you took 4 miles and made that wider. Literally, from Continental all the way up to Jackrabbit. Widen that. What happened to the sidewalks that they were going to put on 68th Street between Camelback and Indian School? Where are those sidewalks? I mean, you guys just gave an approval on the consent agenda for almost $6 million for a noise abatement where you're putting up lanes up in North Scottsdale. Now you want to spend $1.5 million to take away lanes in South Scottsdale. That's just not right. I mean, fiscally, that's crazy. It really is. I mean, I honestly feel the safest in that 1 mile of road on my bicycle, and I ride thousands of miles a year. So I just don't think this is a very good idea. But the crosswalks and those lights to cross in the middle, that's a hell of a good idea. There are some good parts of this. Just don't do that other part.
Next, we will have Veronica Cochran, Kenneth Wang, and Jeff Castlake.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, members. The nature of everything that is funded by federal funds gives me chills and concerns. And I believe everyone who cherishes the idea of sustainable human development. We human beings are under attack with overload of information, forgetting our true intelligence. We are attacked with artificial intelligence today, and young family like this cherish freedom and safety, cherish safety before freedom because they do not yet understand what tyranny look like, what totalitarian regime look like. I happen to study in China. I happen to live in Eastern Germany. I happen to see as a child the totalitarian regime. And let me remind you, this state, everybody, I know from some information that I already publicly know, Arizona is a beta testing ground for a smart city region. We have so much more to be concerned. I don't want the city to become a Wuhan. I studied in China. It's still terrifying to even think what people are going through in China. And please, Mayor, you need to promise us that you are not taking us this road, down the road, the World Economic Forum, that Nazi Klaus Schwab, who talk about hackable animals. So they're putting us in little cages right now and trying to tell us that we will be better off on the bikes. There is nothing wrong with our America. We have idea of freedom. Please, life is not about, I have so much to tell you, I don't know where to start. I used to be an urban planner. I used to work as an architect back in Europe. We preserved our historic city and history, and we cherish our ancestors. Now they are trying to just destroy and put that in the box, and we are all the same, marching like little soldiers. Please, save Arizona, save Scottsdale. I love you guys.
Thank you, Ms. Cochran. Thank you, Ms. Cochran. Next, we have Kenneth Wang, Jeff Castlake, Jack Ketchum.
Hello, folks of Scottsdale City Council. I'm not a resident of Scottsdale, but I have worked in Scottsdale for the past half of a year, and North Scottsdale to be specific, and I used to have to commute all the way up from Mesa up to Scottsdale, and I tried using cycling as an option, and I really wish it were better. I'm currently a person who does bike as a primary form of transportation, and one thing that I've experienced is the tough reality is that drivers have an assumption that we as cyclists don't have a rightful place on the road. Even though sometimes the laws here might require us to be on the road. Drivers often use their 1.5-ton vehicles to intimidate me off the road just because of this dangerous assumption. I literally record all my rides, and I've got half a terabyte of the interactions that I've had with drivers, sacrificing my safety for their convenience, and overall not being particularly kind to me. I feel like having a bike lane would be a good reminder to drivers that we as cyclists do have a place on the road. About this bike lane, I do see that there are benefits to it. I could see myself as an ASU student and other ASU students who can't afford a car taking this route to the downtown Scottsdale area and supporting the local economy. I can also see folks who just need to make a short trip, feeling more safe about making a bike trip rather than taking their car. And this will help people who actually need to go long distances and people who are less physically able to just take a car, as opposed to being clogged up by people like me who more or less are forced to drive. And last but not least, it's really on you guys' hands to be forcing people who shouldn't be driving to drive. There are plenty of people who can't afford insurance and are driving a suspended license just because they don't feel safe anywhere else but in a car. Thanks, residents of Scottsdale.
Thank you. Next, we have Jeff Kaslake, Jack Ketchum, and Jason Alexander. Jeff Kaslake.
Mayor Ortega and City Council members, thank you for the time. I'm Jeff Kaslake. I live in Tempe, Arizona. I'm a bicyclist. One of the things that confused me a bit was the road is identified, I think, as a collector street, but to me it's the same configuration as Priest Drive or University Drive or Mill Avenue, what we might call arterials in Tempe. All the collector streets I'm familiar with are one lane in each direction, Hardy Drive, Alameda, College, so that this one section is 4 lanes is a little scary. I have attended or been a customer at Echo Coffee, Scottsdale Bike Company, TT Roadhouse. I learned about a taco shop today, so I need to go there. I would prefer that 68th Street look the same from Chaparral down to Tempe. In Tempe, it's also got bike lanes, so we're really happy to have a little bit of space on the road. I don't think there was really anything else. Oh, yeah, the one thing that came to mind was this, I think, is part of a pavement preservation project. The pavement on 68th Street's pretty worn, so they applied to the federal government for some funds. Those funds include, well, you have to have bike lanes or something to that effect. So you might be forfeiting about $1.5 million if you don't have that facility on the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack Ketchum, Jason Alexander, Marilyn Atkinson.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. I just wanted to come here and signal my support for this project. I grew up in Scottsdale and currently live in Tempe, and I consider myself one of the visitors to Old Town that would use the bike lane on 68th Street. As others have pointed out, this is the only stretch of 68th Street that has this 2 lanes in both directions configuration. So This would simply make 68th Street more complete and make sense, all the way through. And others have commented that, they don't see many pedestrians or cyclists on 68th Street. But I'm not sure if they've considered that, the facilities that are there on this stretch of 68th Street really aren't inviting to cyclists or pedestrians. So I think this is just a great opportunity for the city of Scottsdale to improve its already very nice bicycle facilities, which many people, year-round enjoy. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Jason Alexander, Marilyn Atkinson, Mike Croker.
Thank you, Jason Alexander. I have been, frankly, quite nauseous at the misinformation and falsifications largely surrounding this project, and they have been promulgated by a small group of anti-growth agitators who have promoted conspiracy theories and paranoia around this project. They allege in their shock video, quote, that this is a scheme from the bicycle lobby, the climate change lobby, and the city staff, and that the final solution is to take you away from your cars. Next slide, please. Or sorry, this is the right slide. Go back one, please. I am certain that most of the emails that you received as a result of this conspiracy theory that's being promulgated by this small anti-growth advocacy group have mentioned that 80% of this project will be federally funded. Next slide, please. I'm also sure that most of the opposition you received does not mention the safety features that this project will provide. They're too busy complaining about your woke government. There's no mention how there will be 2 signaled crosswalks. I'm sure they didn't mention how the city staff conducted outreach in December. I'm sure that they didn't mention how the majority of the businesses and the residents in the area do support this. Now that is resident friendly. Next slide, please. This is a picture of a sample at 96th Street, just north of Shea. Ironically, this is around the corner from some of the million-dollar homes of many of the people who are responsible for promoting these conspiracies about this project. So why are we listening to people who live 15, 20, 25 miles away instead of the residents who live there? Now look, some of the folks who spoke here tonight are local and they do oppose that project, and I respect them and I respectfully disagree with them. But the inconsistency and incoherence of some of these people promoting their conspiracies when they don't live anywhere near this zip code is simply intolerable. Please make your decisions based on facts and data. Thank you so much.
Next, we have Marilyn Atkinson, Mike Croker, and then Kat Djurjevic. So we'll.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to talk about what else but the 68th Street project. I actually contacted a few of the businesses on 68th Street, and they had no clue. Absolutely had not heard a thing. Nobody had met with them. Nobody had tried to get a hold of them. They knew nothing about it. This street, and mind you, I support putting in sidewalks and so on, and safety so that you can cross the street easily in mid-block, that type of thing. It needs to be done. But I cannot help but support the merchants that are there, who've been there a long time, who've had their businesses. As a small business owner myself in the past, I know that once you get into construction, that's it. It's lights out. They've already bounced back from the economy as it is, and to now go through and redo the road, you need those lanes because they have deliveries that come. Those delivery trucks are big. They take up a lot of room. The space there for those businesses are tight. So that's the reason I'm down here, is to support the merchants. I do like that area a lot. I live in South Scottsdale. I don't live far from there at all. I think the other thing is I would rather like to see the city use the funds. Would you please You know, my cousins would come out from Boston, and they wouldn't mention how the streets were so nice. And I told them, I said, we do not allow potholes in Scottsdale. And now I am wrong. We have potholes every place. So would you please take the money and let's get the streets so that we can drive down them safely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have Mike Croker and Kat Djorovic.
Hi, Mike Croker here. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. A lot of things have already been said, so I'm not trying to stay away from it. For the bikers, I understand, the way you feel, or for the strollers, but if you look at the percentage of people that are going to be on that road, and for 5 months when it's 110 degrees out, nobody's going to be out there. So the alternative to that is, well, we should narrow the roads because what we're doing with these apartments, it hasn't even affected the traffic yet. Okay, so think about that. We've been trying to shoot that down, and nothing's been done about that. And second of all, safety-wise, people are going to be more in a hurry with a narrower road, and so your safety could be arguably more at risk. And my idea is that you should see if they can plan a bike lane or an all-purpose lane off the streets like we have in the greenbelt areas, and go with that. And second of all, tell them to stop building the damn apartments. That's the other part. So that's about all I want to say right now, because most of the other things have been said. And let's just do the right thing and
Thank you.
keep
these roads going. In fact, build more roads.
Kat Djorovic.
Hi, I have been in Scottsdale for almost 7 years. I live at 6835 East Elmeria Road, which is just north of McDowell on 68th Street. We have a bike lane, but there's no buffered lane, and that is really, really crucial. My son is here with me today. He is very close to being able to ride his bicycle, but no way would I allow him to do that on 68th Street. I spent my childhood in Yugoslavia. We have no bike lanes over there. That's a whole separate issue. In Canada, I lived in Canada. I dreamed of going to a sleepaway camp, but I went to a bicycle safety camp instead. And I learned a lot about being safe, being protected, knowing when to stop, yield, whatever. I lived in Massachusetts, where we biked against traffic, so you could see them coming towards you if they were gonna hit you, which is fine. In Arizona, it's totally different. We are a very safe, conscious family in terms of bicycles. We wear helmets. We have very bright and flashy bicycles. We wear flags. We are out there to let them know that we're a person. Do not come close to us. And still, we have been clipped. We now need to have horns that are actually decibel levels of a car, excuse me. And it surprises them, but also what surprises me is when a car is about to hit me. So I want to ride, to walk, and to drive on safe roads. On 68th Street north of Osborne, just before Indian School, you have all of those cars that are parked alongside the apartments. Even as a driver, I go to the left because I don't know if somebody's going to come out and open the door. So even as a driver, I avoid the right lane because there's no buffered area. So if we add a bike lane and a buffered bike lane, everyone is protected. And going back to, being able to avoid the area, yes, we avoid it, but we still can't get around cars trying to hit us.
Thank you. Next, we have Chad Rubin and Brad Henrik. According to my count, Brad is the last speaker. So we have Chad Rubin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, elected officials. Thank you so much for your service to our city of Scottsdale. I'm here to speak of this project on two perspectives, that of a resident off of 68th Street, just north of Thomas, as well as a community member. It seems that no one's really talking about the fact that Osborne is quite a busy road. There's a light there. There's not one north of that. So that being said, it's a much busier road and there's a lot more traffic. So as a resident, I can't imagine the next year of me pulling in and out of my place and, having to deal with that. As a community member, I'm really proud of where our community's come off of 68th Street, and I want to see it grow, but I don't think, I don't think that we can see it grow without taking a step back and really looking at this plan and how we can move forward as a community, because it seems one way is being pushed without talking to the community. So I think maybe take a step back and bring it up again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And next I have Brad Henrich. Or Henrich. Henrich, excuse me.
It's all right. Howdy. Thank you for having me up here. I own business property at 2915 North 68th Street. I've been there as an operator and then as an owner for over 28 years now. Lived in Scottsdale, just off 68th Street, just north of Camelback. And actually, when they built the great big giant conglomerate complex that was supposed to have 600 units and now has over 900 units, that drove me out of there because of the traffic. From that, the density. Now I live in Paradise Valley. I'm still the property owner on 68th Street. My tenant, finally, after being crippled from the shutdowns, getting back and going again, only to be crippled again, all these businesses there. I used to ride my bicycle regularly to work, back and forth, from right near Camelback to right near Thomas. Never had any issues, always nice. I remember when it was 2 lanes going each direction most of the way into Tempe. I liked that so much better. Traffic moved more freely. And now we're increasing the density and decreasing the amount of cars that can travel on the road. There's nowhere else to go. The other streets are already full. That's why they're coming to 68th Street. It just does not make sense. We're going to drive people out of the area like I've been driven out. And I hate to see the business, my tenant, my property that I own. I depend on income from the rents, having that go away because people can't get there. It's too much traffic. They don't want to bother. I put in bicycle racks years ago. We have bicyclists there. Our customers that are bicyclists never complain about that. It's just not an issue. So thank you very much for hearing me out. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you, sir. With that, I will close public comment portion of the presentation. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Next, we're going to look at council member comments, and I see Councilmember Durham, Councilwoman Whitehead, and then Councilwoman Janik. Councilmember Durham.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a number of questions for the staff. I'm not sure which of you is best equipped to answer them, but there's been quite a bit of concern tonight about access to businesses on 68th Street during this period. And so I'd like to hear what you have to say about access to businesses, because that is a big concern. We don't want anyone's business to be impaired. So I'd ask what actions, what precautions are being taken to make sure that businesses can continue to operate during this period.
Mayor and Councilman Durham, this project has a limited amount of infrastructure, and so in the work in the street, we would preserve access to all of the businesses during construction. Even when we pave the roadway, it will be done in segments, and that will be with a micro seal. But all the work that we do, when we pave throughout the city, there's access provided to all the businesses, and it's done in an incremental effort. I don't know if Allison could add a little construction side.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Yes, specifically the section from, can we pull up my slides, please? Okay, specifically this section between Osborne and Thomas Road where there isn't any work done on the medians. What we're doing here essentially is a slurry seal and restriping the road. And actually, this road is due for a slurry seal. So we actually were supposed to slurry seal the road, but we deferred that maintenance because we knew this project was coming up. So if we don't do this project, which in this area is essentially a slurry seal and restripe, we actually will have to slurry seal and restripe the road.
Thank you. Next, I wanted to ask about community outreach. I believe I read that there were over 5,000 postcards sent out to the area.
Yes, that's correct, Mayor and Councilmember Durham. We did send over 5,900 postcards to the businesses and the residents within the area.
My next question, I hate to ask this question because it's silly, frankly, but it's been suggested that the city intentionally withheld providing notices to businesses so that they wouldn't object. Is it true that the city withheld notifying businesses of this project?
Mayor and Councilmember Durham, no, we did not withhold anyone within the targeted area.
Next, I wanted to ask some questions about the finances. This project is something like $1.5 million, something like that roughly. I think most people don't understand that only $89,000 of Scottsdale's money is going toward this project. Is that right?
Mayor, Councilmember Durham, that's correct. The project is, I'm going to scroll back here. I'm going the wrong way. Okay, so the federal funding that we have is $1,485,936. And with that, we do have a local contribution requirement of $89,819. And then our calculation to complete the project, including the administration and staff time, we could need up to an additional $92,000 to complete the project. So it's the 89 plus the 92.
Now, if we were to vote this down, what would happen to the federal funds? It's roughly $1.4 million or something like that. Could we take that money and patch potholes or do something else with it?
No, Mayor, Councilmember Durham, if we turn down the federal grant, we lose it and it goes into closeout funds and other communities can apply for it.
And what would happen to our future relations with the federal government and transportation funds if we were to turn this money down?
Mayor, Councilmember Durham, I can't really speak to that. Maybe Mark can.
I think there's a possibility of the relationship between MAG, that we have with MAG, as well as ADOT and the FHWA, part of the DOT, could be strained if we renege on this money. We apply for other federal projects, not just transportation. They come our way from DC, and I think that us not accepting this money for this project could hinder that.
Thank you. I have no more questions right now.
Councilwoman Whitehead, Councilwoman Janik.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Mayor, and thanks. We definitely received a lot of emails, and I will say that the neighbors in the area definitely are more supportive, and I know you can never get 100% of any area. You know, I want to talk about a couple of things before I get to this project. First of all, this idea that that this is some sort of slippery slope towards road diets everywhere. You know, I will say that I think that the city did make a mistake by putting some proposed road diets on a website. I got to pull those up. None of those projects are imminent. I'm actually going to be asking that they be pulled. I think one project that's gotten a lot of attention is like maybe would be under consideration 10 years out. So to the question, are you the people who mostly wrote from the northern part of the city, will you be having a road diet in your neighborhood soon? The answer is no. As well, I am hosting meetings with neighborhoods to talk about that. Do they want it? Do they not want it? Another thing I want to talk about is the idea of this, this idea of road narrowing. Last year, many of the people who wrote me emails, in fact, were the same people that helped me stop a road widening project right there in the Shea Corridor. Most of the emails did come from the Shea Cactus Corridor. So I sent out my newsletter and let people know that the transportation staff was considering a road widening project that would have disrupted a nice pedestrian corridor with tree-lined roads, Mountain View Road, and added 2 lanes, which would have enabled more high-density development in the area. It would have been infrastructure for more development. So with your help and the support of my council colleagues, we went ahead and nixed that project. So we're very interested in A, community input, and B, protecting all users of our roads. So on the 68th Street proposal, this is not, I wouldn't call this a road diet. We have a road that is 1 lane each direction with a center lane throughout the entire length of this road, with the exception with a mismatched section where we suddenly have 4 lanes and we have not correct ADA access, Americans with Disability Act access, and we don't have bike lanes. So this is fixing a problem. As I said, I'm not a big fan of spending any dollars to fix something that isn't broken, that nobody wants. But this is a broken section of the road that does need repairs. It needs to be consistent with the rest of the road, and there will be many benefits to the people who are in cars as well as the people who are riding bikes. And I want to point out that the people with disabilities have every right to be safe on our roads as well as people in cars. So while I get it that some of you may have a very specific cause in mind, and you have that right to challenge us and to rally behind that cause, we as a city council, that is not a right we have. We sit up here and we represent the whole community. It is our job not to put the interests of one group ahead of the safety of another group, disabled people, children, fill in the blank. So that is what we're doing here, is we are using federal dollars that are designated to make this corridor safer for people with disabilities as well as others. So what are we going to get with this project, which is funded? And I think we're all relieved that there is very limited infrastructure because this is an older part of town. So we're getting ADA accessibility. And I want to talk about that too, because a gentleman just a few weeks ago, 80-something-year-old gentleman in a wheelchair was hit and killed because there was no crosswalks like the ones that are going to be installed on this road. And there are plenty other gruesome accidents I can tell you about. So pedestrian safety doesn't make it more dangerous for cars. It makes it safer for everyone, including you, because you don't want to hit somebody. The repercussions, just the grief it'll cause you as a human being is bad enough, but there will be other repercussions too. So this roadway will be consistent. It will create it'll improve traffic flow because there'll be dedicated right turn lanes. We're hearing about car crashes because people are slamming on the brakes because you want to turn right. So we're going to have dedicated right turn lanes, left turn pockets. We'll allow the trolleys to get off the lane to let riders on and off. We're going to continue with the parking, and we're going to have the bike lanes. We're going to fill a gap. And I just want to stress the crosswalk is really key. So the people that have written to me from my neighborhood, 85260, 8525958, they have all this. It's easy to take ADA accessibility for granted if you already have it. It's easy to take bike safety. We have bike lanes everywhere. We don't tell people, hey, go a few blocks that way to get a bike lane. Up north, where the roads are newer, we have bike lanes. So I received a letter from a resident who said, why is it okay for people in the north to have this and benefit from this, and yet they are asking us, the city council, to deny them the same benefits? One more comment on bike safety. I will tell you, since that it's not as tragic of a story, we did have a city employee who will remain nameless, who was hit he fell because of the bike lane ending at Thomas Road. He hit a curb and fell and did break some bones. And as a taxpayer, I'm pleased to tell you he did not sue the city, but that's not always the case. Let me see. I want to address all of the complaints that I've had, some of the misinformation about putting this to a vote. That is not how cities roll. We don't put it to a vote to decide if people with disabilities have the right to be safely using our public streets. And that's, we don't spend a couple $100,000, delay a project, lose federal money to put it up for a vote. When it comes to protecting citizens, our job as a city council is to do that. Staff already addressed the electric contractor, started out as an electric contractor. Obviously, he was successful and became a general contractor. Small businesses, I want to address that. Construction is hard. But the good news is this isn't the roundabout. And believe me, because of this project, I found your bakery. So we are very committed to protecting our businesses. And when this is a more pedestrian-friendly corridor, I think you'll see an increase in your business. Outreach, I want to talk about outreach. This city of Scottsdale does far more outreach than is required by the state government, and we're not getting a whole lot of thanks. We could save a lot of tax dollars by simply doing the outreach as required by the state. So when we do excessive outreach, when we go out of our way, we cannot reach everybody. If we still get complaints, maybe we should save those tax dollars and just do what the state requires. And let me see if there's anything else. Oh, many of you mentioned data from other cities, or from other states, New York, California, Florida. Let me tell you, we just had a lane narrowing project right here in the area. It was when Councilwoman Littlefield and myself and former Councilwoman Millhaven were on the council a couple years ago. Staff came forward and decided they thought it would be better and safer for all to narrow Indian School Road. And not a single person showed up. So I'm flattered with all the attention today. But Councilwoman Littlefield and I both voted yes, as did Councilwoman Millhaven, but she was the only one to ask the question, do you think this will cause a traffic problem? It did not, and we haven't had a single complaint. So you can talk about California, you can talk about New York, you can talk about Florida, but we just did it right here. And most of the people that were willing to talk to me that did contact me from other parts of the city admitted they had never been to this road, and they were just worried about this spreading and having all of our roads turned into bike lanes, which just frankly isn't going to happen. And one other thing, the Greenbelt. Everybody talked about the Greenbelt, and I love the Greenbelt too. Voters turned it down twice. So, there's always naysayers for every project. Civic Center Plaza, to make that pedestrian friendly. The city council voted to put the road underneath to create a park that is now one of our most beloved parks and pedestrian friendly. And I will tell you, 3 incumbents lost the election because they voted to do that. So I understand change is hard. I appreciate everybody's input. And when we're going to do a project in any neighborhood, we're going to definitely weigh the interests of those who are directly impacted. So thank you.
Next, we have Councilwoman Janik, Councilmember Graham, and Councilwoman Caputi.
Thank you, Mayor. These are my concerns. 14,000 cars a day are on the northern portion of this segment that we're talking about. Where are they going to go? They're all going to be in 1 lane instead of 2, or they're going to be on parallel streets. I don't see that as an improvement. I see that just as shifting the problem to a different location in a different way. I know that our staff did a very good job of notification. I'm sorry that they missed people. I think we need to go back and take a look and say, how did we miss some of the key owners of the businesses? I do have concerns about the businesses. We want to foster the success of our small businesses. And I've asked several people, do you think if there's a bike lane next to the small business as opposed to a traffic lane, do you think that will affect business? And they all said, yes, they do. There's less visibility. Do I want rapid flashing beacons? Yes, we need to do that. Do I want ADA compliance? Yes, we need to do that. And I have a question for Mark. In the past, we had money set aside to make our sidewalks ADA compliant. Do we have any programs to do that currently?
Mayor and Councilwoman Janik, yes, we do have some sidewalk funding in our Y accounts. It's accounts that we, instead of having a large CIP project, we're able to pull and do sidewalk improvements within the city. We've, if you're aware, we did that in Old Town this year. We used sidewalk funds to fix a lot of the corners and crossings and all that in the Old Town area. So yes, we do, but it is very limited.
Okay, I would suggest perhaps maybe some of this money we will be spending on this project be used for sidewalk enhancements, like maybe $180,000. To me, that's a better use. Do I want the streets to be slurried? Yes, I do. Do I want to take a traffic lane and make it a bike lane? It doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't, okay? I love bikers. I have kids that are bikers. They've all been hit by cars. So I understand that situation. What I would like to look at is alternatives. And Councilwoman Whitehead hit the nail on the head. We narrowed Indian School and nobody complained. Perhaps we can narrow 68th Street, still maintain 4 lanes, fix our sidewalks, and have a bike lane that is passable, usable. Because I'll tell you, you're talking about the lanes up north, those bike lanes aren't that wide. Maybe 2 to 3 feet, I'd say. So that's kind of where I'm coming in. Now, the other thing I do want to say is that we received hundreds of emails. I read most of them. I want to ask you to be polite, and many of you, unfortunately, have not been. This is a tough job. I know why some of you want the bike lanes. I get that. But we have to make a decision. I've spent hours on it. I've had sleepless nights because I'm trying to figure out what can we do. And again, the best conclusion I can come up with is I think we need to look at some alternatives that would work for this program to accommodate everybody. We're pretty smart. I think we can do it. I don't think it's that I question, are we doing this because we went after federal funds and that's what the federal funds want? We are smarter than that. We need to be smarter than that. So those are pretty much my concerns, and I just want to say I, too, am very, very much concerned about safety. Thank you.
Next, we have Councilmember Graham, Councilwoman Caputi, and Vice Mayor Littlefield.
As far as the Indian School road diet, that was several years ago. That passed City Council unanimously. Transportation Commission, there was 1 vote against it. That was me. I was on the Transportation Commission at the time. before I served on planning, and I voted against that because I wasn't convinced of the necessity of it. Now, I want to talk about Mark and Allison. Thank you for your presentation. Are there any roundabouts in this project?
No, there are not any roundabouts.
Were there any roundabouts in it that were contemplated at any time?
The beginning of this project was before my time, but I do not believe that they were considered as part of this project.
Allison, do you agree with that?
Mayor, Councilmember Graham, I do not believe that a roundabout was considered, but I can't say either.
Okay.
We would probably have to verify that. It may have been a concept early on and put off to the wayside.
Okay, because I was told that we couldn't, I thought that at one iteration there was a roundabout on this, and we were told that we can't change a single aspect of the scope. We can't change a single aspect of the scope and still get unlock the federal dollars. And so I just don't, there's really no flexibility to still get these dollars without, ripping out car lanes, because there's so much about this project that people do want, as far as the crosswalks and maybe a little more space for bikes or turn lanes.
In Mayor and Councilman Graham, I think what really needs to be understood is that a lot of this work, when you're reconfiguring this roadway, is striping. It is paving and then striping. If in fact, in future years, a change needs to be made to the road.
Okay.
Well, we would go through another paving cycle, and we could make those changes. There's very little that we can't change back if, in fact, it doesn't work. But we believe that it would.
Mm-hmm.
We have the data, we have the design and the professionals in-house that feel that this is a strong project.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Just a few more questions. You said this project includes narrowing the lanes, so the lanes in the street would be narrowed. How much would they be narrowed?
They would be going down to our 11-foot standards.
And what are they right now?
They're some 12, 13 feet wide. They're wider, and with that you get more speed.
Is it possible to narrow the lanes a foot or two and have enough space for a bike lane? Have a little more space for a bike lane?
You would have, I don't know if you would have adequate space.
A couple feet sounds like, from what you're saying, per lane. So 4 feet right there.
You would also have the gutter pan, which is very unsafe for cyclists.
Okay, I just, I'm not very inspired by I don't like this to be like an us versus them sort of debate. I'm trying to I'm really interested in finding some sort of common ground, because it's not cyclists versus, drivers. And so I'm just trying, what can we do to find some sort of middle ground? In your presentation, you brought up 86th Street as a success story for a road diet. The 86th Street, or I'm sorry, 68th Street is a collector street. 86th Street, is that a collector street?
It is not, and it is not a road diet. It was adding bicycle lanes on the side to actually, we also narrowed the lanes to the 11 feet, but we put in bicycle lanes that also buffered the pedestrians on the side. So it was an example of putting bike lanes on a street that didn't have it, and then also adding buffer for those on the sidewalks.
Okay, so what type of street is 86th Street?
It's a neighborhood street.
Okay. Okay. Now, because I listened closely to there were so many people, residents that came and spoke to us, and we learned so much from the emails. When the president of the Southwest Village Association, what I heard, they like this project, but above all, they just want to be able to have pedestrian access across 68th Street. Above all, what I heard was they want those crosswalks. So I'm not trying to put words in her mouth, but It seems like they are accepting the full deal because that's kind of one of the problems with these projects. When we take these federal dollars, strings come attached, and sometimes they make us do things we don't want to do. So I heard that, and I was interested in getting this more pedestrian friendly, maybe finding a couple feet of road width and make a little extra space for bikes, so it's not so much of an us versus them. One thing, I was on Transportation Commission for almost 7 years, and you know, this road, I mean, we don't want to call it a road diet. I looked it up. Department of Transportation. A road diet typically involves converting an existing 4-lane roadway to a 3-lane roadway with the middle lane. I mean, it's straight from the Federal Transportation Department. So when you road diet 68th Street, it's going to pressure our drivers and people getting from community to community to use 64th Street and Goldwater and Scottsdale. The cars don't go away. So we're just reallocating, we're diverting the traffic. It's not like the traffic vanishes, in my opinion. I'm also really weighed down by when we went to the voters in 2018, 2019 to pass the bonds. We told them that we needed, we asked them for authorization to buy projects that would cost $319 million. We really needed $1 billion of projects, and this was, you know, eons ago if you look at inflation. The $319 million is now we're almost at $450 million, $500 million, and we decided these were urgent must-haves. These were not nice-to-haves. We hear about potholes. We drive over potholes. This project feels like we're spending money we don't have on something that a lot of people just don't want. And we have so many other urgent capital needs, and we need to have the money for the bond projects. And people talk about, oh, this is a tiny match. This is a tiny match, a local match that's going to unlock federal dollars. Those federal dollars come with strings. And as we saw with the roundabout in the Osborne project, what started as the federal government gives us $1 and we spend 33 cents. That didn't go up to 50 cents per dollar. That didn't go up. We didn't match it dollar for dollar. We ended up, now we're paying $1.65 out of our own pocket to unlock $1 of federal money. So a couple more comments. We've heard a lot of feedback from people that have opened up to us honestly about how they moved to Scottsdale from other cities, and they said, we tried it in the city we left. We came to Scottsdale because that's not how things are here. We tried it in our former city. They regretted it, and they put it back. We heard that very often. We talked about the strings attached to the federal dollars. This council had a retreat a couple weeks ago, and one of the things that we talked about was that based on polling, residents are not happy with the air quality. And so I'm concerned about the gridlock that's going to be going on 64th, Goldwater, and Scottsdale, and here, and the increased idling and the less movement of traffic, and what that does to air quality. So overall, this project doesn't seem to, from what I'm hearing, to have met our best practices in outreach. And I would just pose the question. Does this project benefit a small group at the expense of a very large group? Or does it benefit a large group at the expense of a small group? And that's kind of a rhetorical question. So we're looking at $1.6 million in total funding. And you know, the question about would our relationship with the federal government sour if we returned it? Returning these projects, that happens all the time. I mean, I think that's kind of a non sequitur about would it strain our relationship with the federal government. I mean, they're the ones giving us the money, and they're attaching strings to it. Cities are allowed to determine for themselves what's best for their community. So I think we should define a road diet. And one last thing is, you know, safety of our people is incredibly of paramount importance. But when our engineers put this road project together, our staff, our professional staff, Everything we do is measured. We factor safety into it right now. So it's not fair to say that everything we have here is unsafe, because every project that we're doing, yes, it's nice to, we can't give up everything and cost everything to reach some level of desired safety. Everything, there's safety and risk in everything, and so we have to balance those and we have to consider our costs. So with that, I will return the mic back to the mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mark and Allison.
Thank you. Councilwoman Caputi, Vice Mayor Littlefield.
Thank you. We hear a lot of controversial projects up here, and I have to tell you, this is one I never saw coming. I still, sitting here, really read all the emails, and I'm having a hard time understanding the controversy. So this project is a 1 mile section of a road that's 4 lanes north and 4 lanes south. I'm sorry, the other way around. 2 lanes up, 2 lanes down, and 4 lanes in this one little 1 mile section of a roadway. And so we are simply asking to align the street. We are removing the bikes and the buses from travel lanes so that I'm understanding that traffic will actually flow much smoother, correct? So we are thinking about this project as an improvement, certainly not something that would be stopping traffic in any possible way. The only thing we haven't really talked about, which came up over and over in the comments that we heard, was the fact that people are concerned about increasing traffic volumes in the city, and I think that's real. People are scared that if you narrow a road, suddenly there's going to be more traffic, more congestion, more gridlock, more pollution. And yet, all of the data that the city provided us showed the exact opposite, that traffic volumes are not increasing year over year in the city, that in fact, they've stayed fairly flat over the last however many years we've studied, and that I saw some numbers from the director of our public works that showed us that specifically on this street, 68th Street, on this segment, traffic has actually been decreasing over time, not increasing. And so it was my understanding that the reason it makes sense to align the street on this one small mile section was that it wouldn't actually cause the things that people are afraid of happening. Could you just maybe address that? Because I think that's the thing that's scaring people the most, that we're going to narrow the streets, create the bike lane, create the pedestrian lane, have a nice crosswalk, but we'll be overwhelmed with traffic on this section, or that the so much more traffic is going to flow over to the other feeder streets. And I'm not seeing that in the data. And again, I totally appreciate people's fears and their feelings and their comments, but we have to make decisions on this dais based on facts and data, and so I really want to hear more of that, please.
Mayor and Councilwoman Caputi, your overall comment on traffic volumes in the city for the past 20 years has been somewhat flat, somewhere between 3.5 and 4 million vehicle miles. So it is pretty flat.
And I actually think you should repeat that, because when I have this conversation with folks, they tend to be incredulous about it. But that's my understanding, that since the 101...
And this is data that we prepare. Regarding 68th Street, we feel that the improvements will be a more effective use of the right-of-way. So when you have one lane of traffic that does not have to weave back and forth to be able to turn, we're creating turn lanes left and right. It is far more effective than a 4-lane roadway. And in terms of volumes, there is more than enough capacity for one lane in that stretch, just like we have in the other portions of 68th Street.
Okay, and then in terms of this idea that first responders would have trouble getting through, I heard this a lot too, yeah.
First of all, we had the question today posed to us, was this approved by the fire department? And this project went through the one-stop shop in planning and was reviewed and approved. But the question is, can a fire vehicle get around you? It's paint. So yes, it can. We aren't changing the curb line on the sidewalk side. The only modifications that we're making are to the median to make sure that we're able to put left turn pockets in.
Okay, and then again, people are very concerned that this particular section of our city is going to be overwhelmed in the future. I know that when we plan our roads, we're looking out decades. So I'm under the impression that city staff is more than comfortable that the capacity of this road, if we were to go ahead and do these adjustments and improvements, would be more than adequate to address any future growth of the city in that area. Is that right?
That is what staff believes, correct.
Okay, so again, when we hear the facts and the data, it's just super hard to, again, it's a 1 mile section and we're connecting from top to bottom. And then I guess I just have one last question since it kept getting mentioned here on the dais tonight. What sort of strings would be involved in accepting federal dollars on this project? Because that sounds like, again, I heard so many conspiracy theories when we were listening to this in terms of, as far as I know, the city isn't looking to eliminate lanes or force people to ride bikes. I don't know what a bike lobby is. I'm not familiar with strings associated with this project, so, I mean, am I missing something?
Mayor, Councilwoman Caputi, no, you're not missing anything. There are no strings.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's the end of my questions.
Vice Mayor Littlefield, then Councilmember Durham.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd like everyone to know I'm extremely familiar with this area of Scottsdale. I grew up here, just a few blocks away. And so I went to schools here, I rode my bikes here, I did all those kinds of fun things as a kid growing up. And it's an area that's very near and dear to my heart because it's my home. I think of it as home. But I also agree pretty much 100% with what Councilwoman Janik said earlier. I think that she has a very good feel for this, and I totally agree with what she said, with the concerns that I have on this issue. I do not believe that this plan serves the best interest of either the majority of the citizens who live in this area or those who use 68th Street to travel to and from work, either from our Scottsdale neighborhoods or from other cities. This street, 68th Street, it's not a neighborhood city, or not a neighborhood street. It is a connector street, and it is built and designed to handle traffic that comes from other cities, Tempe and other cities to the east, and have a way for those cars and those trucks to travel through Scottsdale to their ultimate locations and then back again. Of course, folks can, folks that live in this area, they go to work here, they go to school here, they also go to the hospitals here, they do their shopping here, so they need to have access to these streets also. And of course, I understand the wish to ride bikes and want more space for those bikes. However, the main purpose of building any street, paved street in Scottsdale or basically any other city is for the ease and safety of vehicular traffic. On the sides of the streets, you put your bike lanes, you put crossings, you put all kinds of extra stuff, but the purpose of having this street to begin with, a paved street, is for vehicular traffic. And that also includes transport for buses, for fire trucks, for police cars, for ambulances, and everything else that nearby residential homes might need to have come to their homes. You do not want those kinds of emergency vehicles to have to slow down and stop or to not be able to get to their homes to help people who need to go to hospitals because they can't get around traffic. There's no place for the other cars to pull off, and they have to stop and wait. It will slow them down. And when you need emergency vehicles, emergency care, You don't want the vehicles that you're riding in to have to slow down. We have received, literally, as others have said up here, hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of emails regarding this. I think it's probably the heaviest email receipt from any group of people on any comment on any project that I have sat in and listened to for Scottsdale. People care about this. Folks want to be able to ride their bikes along 68th Street, and they do want more space for safety. I totally understand that. So do pedestrians, so do cars. However, the main reason for having paved roads and multiple lanes is for the movement of the car. And when they are traveling to and from cities trying to get to work, to drop off their kids, to shop, or to handle emergency situations, they want to be able to get through on these roads. I've jotted down just a few comments from people who either live in this area or who use the streets on a regular basis. Just one example of the hundreds of emails that we have received from businesses and individuals. A custom jewelry business. For 40 years, they have been in business in Old Town, and the biggest problem has always been parking. To quote, "In all the time I've been in Scottsdale, never once has anyone ever ridden a bike to my store. We do not need or want this. Also, this will push more people onto Scottsdale Road, which is already overcrowded." This is a bad idea in general for our city and our citizens, and it would set a terrible precedent. I do not believe a road diet for any street in Scottsdale will help. One of the most complained about issues in Scottsdale is traffic congestion. People don't want to get out of their cars. They want to be able to drive them safely and in a timely manner through the streets of our city. The project will only make traffic congestion worse. People in Scottsdale are not going to get out of their cars in the summer, or in the fall, or in the spring, or in the winter, especially not when the temperatures rise into triple digits. Also, in effect, this could housebound many of our elderly population who live in this area and who have medical limitations and are not able to take long bike rides or long walks. Another citizen quoted, "I am tired of the city council doing what special interest groups tell them to do without regard for what the tax-paying residents want. I do not want my beautiful city to be socially engineered for a select few and at the expense of the majority of Scottsdale residents. Use the money you have available for this to repair the existing roads by widening them, adding more lanes where needed, adding more landscaping, and fixing the surfaces where they need repair and repaving. Both car and bike traffic could be enhanced by that." Let me get the paper out here. And I totally agree with that. I have no problem with fixing the potholes, repaving the roads when they need it, including the bike lanes, including the walking paths and the sidewalks. Add the ADA compliant additional to the sidewalks where they're needed. That's fine. We have heard input from businesses in this area that this plan will kill the businesses on 68th Street since it will discourage vehicular traffic there. I've heard a number of businesses, many, many businesses, who once this came out and became known, said, "Nobody ever told us about this. We didn't know about it, therefore we didn't have the chance to respond." That's not right when you're talking about putting these businesses possibly out of business. We should be helping our businesses stay in business and helping them, the small local businesses that work in this area, help them to maintain their businesses, especially if we are going to repaint the roads or restripe the roads. We shouldn't be trying to kill them off. And that is what a lot of this is going to be doing. Also, do we have a plan to prevent the impedance of emergency vehicles if this goes through. Police, fire, ambulances. We may have elderly folks living in this area and need these services to be quick and safely available when required. And that really concerns me when we're talking about getting rid of a traffic lane and only have one each way. My suggestions, very simple, and I think they would help, at least, for now. Fix the potholes. I know there are potholes on this street. I have driven it recently. Fix the road surfaces. Resurface worn street areas, including the bike lanes. Fix them so that they can comfortably ride bikes on them. Ensure directional signage is located in areas where it can be seen by everyone, so you know. That will do more good and be more useful for everyone who uses these streets. One citizen wrote, "I find this financially, economically, and socially irresponsible." That pretty much sums it up for me. It is not our duty up here to coerce our citizens into travel modes that they don't want. If they want to ride a bike, ride a bike. Let's make the bike lanes rideable and comfortable for them to do so. Let's make the car lanes comfortable for them to ride so they don't have to worry about dropping their tires into potholes. Both the weather and the demographics in this area in Scottsdale support increasing automobile lanes, not decreasing them. And I have an additional comment, which I think I'm just going to add here because everybody's saying a whole bunch of stuff up here. This introduces resentment and discrimination into the social fabric of Scottsdale. Yesterday, I took a drive up to North Scottsdale as far as Dynamite, and I witnessed all the construction going on there to create more lanes of roadway and to decrease congestion in the north because of all the building that's going on, all of the construction that's happening. While at the same time, it is being discussed by the city to reduce traffic lanes in South Scottsdale, in spite of all the expected construction of new apartments that have already been approved in this area. One citizen wrote, "I can see the headlines. City increases road lanes for Lexus, Mercedes, BMWs, and Teslas, while reducing and removing road lanes for Fords, Chevys, Hondas, and Toyotas." Hey, I drive a Toyota here. Sounds like discrimination. It may not be meant to be, and I don't think it is, but it can be resented by a lot of people. Several similar comments I've already had in my email. Do we really want to introduce and support this kind of antagonism within our city? I don't think we do. It's not here now. Let's not put it there. For all these reasons, I will not be supporting this tonight. It is not helpful to the area, and it is not good for Scottsdale as a whole. Also, this is the camel's nose under the tent for social engineering of our travel modes. I prefer to keep that camel outside of Scottsdale. Thank you.
Okay, next. Councilmember Durham.
Thank you. I just want to say, Mr. Benora, we're not going to let you go out of business. It sounds like you've got a great business, and I tried to visit you today, and I would have loved to buy something. I promise I'll come back. But the people that run the city are not going to let you go out of business. In fact, bicyclists love to eat pastries. And I've gotten many emails saying people over 55 never ride bicycles. And I think Mr. McLaren, and certainly I can tell them to the contrary, we do ride bikes. And if there's a bike lane by your business, I can guarantee you that you're going to have more business from bikers. Sure. No? Okay, no.
Please.
It won't go on the record, but we're not going to let you go out of business. That's just not going to happen. I do live by a terrible construction project up at the north side of Scottsdale, and throughout that project, there has been access to all the businesses. There's no problem getting access to any of the businesses. The contractors, the city staff, et cetera, have made sure all the businesses are open and functioning. And we're not going to let your business be shut down. So my comments on this, I agree 100% with Councilmember Whitehead that we are not going to enact a general policy of road diets. Every single road must be considered on its own. So, and we need to look at facts and data, not propaganda videos and lies and misinformation. So this case is not a precedent for any other case. So what we have to start with are what are the current conditions on this road? And in particular, what is the current level of traffic? So we look at the facts of 68th Street. Now, right now, our traffic engineers tell us that the road is at less than half of its capacity. And some people have suggested this is old data from 2016. That's not true. This is the most recent data that we can possibly get. And if we go through the lane reduction, the road will still be above capacity, according to engineers and experts. And second, I've driven this road numerous times in the last few weeks. In fact, I drove it today before this meeting. I made a left turn off of Indian School onto 68th Street. And between 68th Street and Osborne, there were exactly 2 cars in the southbound lane. And I was one of those 2 cars. So I could see all the way ahead to Osborne, and there was absolutely no traffic except for 2 cars. And I have never seen 2 cars driving beside each other on that road, which tells me that if we go through a lane reduction, the road will still be above capacity. I've never experienced any heavy traffic on that road, and I've driven it at different times of the day. And if you want to question that, I would encourage everyone to open up Google Maps and take a look at this road. And what you'll find is the cars are widely spaced out with plenty of room between the cars. There aren't 2 cars moving beside each other. At the red light at Indian School Road, you'll see 6 cars parked at the red light waiting for a green light. But that's obviously normal to see cars backed up at a green light, at a red light. But what you'll see is throughout the length of 68th Street, there aren't many cars there. And most importantly, maybe, the opponents of this project have circulated a number of videos. But if you look at those videos, you'll see that there aren't many cars on 68th Street. I've watched all those videos, and there was a video about your business yesterday, and the video about your business shows the same thing. There aren't many cars on that stretch of 68th Street. And all the cars are usually mostly one lane. So these videos, and plus the one Mr. Melenchenko showed tonight, sort of demonstrate that this road doesn't get much traffic. And the people who made these videos probably realize that they show a low amount of traffic because most of the videos are devoted to Scottsdale Road or other roads, which do have traffic. And obviously Scottsdale Road is crowded, but the fact that Scottsdale Road is crowded doesn't tell us anything about what's going on 68th Road, 68th Street. So we have to focus on 68th Street. Now, some people have claimed that new apartments in the pipeline might clog 68th Street, but none of those new apartments are near 68th Street except for the one that's up at the corner of Indian School Road. So there are a lot of new apartments on Hayden, Scottsdale, some other locations, but those people are not going to be driving down 68th Street. So I would be worried if there were a lot of new apartments along 68th Street. I'd be worried about adding to the congestion, but they aren't going to add to that congestion. And I hate to disagree with Councilmember Littlefield, but She's concerned about emergency vehicles, but most of 68th Street is a two-lane road. So if there were a problem with emergency vehicles, it would already be happening. In fact, I think 68th Street is about 5 miles long, and this is only a mile. So, and Mr. Pedgman said it would be dangerous to reduce 68th Street to 2 lanes, but that's already happened. So if 68th Street were dangerous with only 2 lanes, it would already be dangerous because the vast majority of that road is only 2 lanes. And so what this project does is it fixes an inconsistency. And that inconsistency is dangerous because it allows people to speed through that area of 2 lanes. It allows people to try to pass each other, pass slower moving cars, which is obviously dangerous for pedestrians in this area. So if narrowing 68th Street is going to create a problem, it would have already created that problem south of Thomas and north of Indian School. So we know it's not going to create a problem. The fact that it's not happening tells you that 2 lanes are adequate. All this does is fix an inconsistency in 68th Street and eliminates a hole in our bike paths. Now, not having consistent roadway creates problems because it creates speeding when one car tries to maneuver around another. And some people have said they don't see bicycles using this stretch, but without bike lanes, that shouldn't be a surprise. A lot of bicyclists are not going to try to bike on a road that doesn't have bike lanes. And there's also been a lot of misinformation about the cost. This is an $89,000 expenditure from the city. And if we don't use these federal funds, we don't get to use them for potholes or sidewalks or anything else. They disappear. And we may not get any more similar funds for a while. So if this money goes, we don't get to fix potholes, we don't get to fix new sidewalks, and we lose all of the improvements that come with this. So that means we lose the pedestrian lights, we lose the crosswalks, we lose the ADA compliance, we lose the right and the left turn lanes. And, you know, I don't like that system of taking money from the federal government any more than many of you do, but that's the system we live in. And unless you want to move to another country, that's the way it works. That money, which is very necessary, comes with strings attached. I've mentioned Councilmember Whitehead did a very good job of mentioning all the other safety features in this project. And I've asked some questions about the neighborhood support. It seems clear to me that the people who actually live in this area are enthusiastically in support of this project. Many of the comments we've gotten tonight, now some opponents do live near the project, but many of them don't. That's just a fact. I've listened to your addresses tonight, and many of you, the opponents, don't live near this project. So I am most concerned with the people who live near this project, whose lives will be directly affected. We've heard a lot of comments about the safety of children. This project, it seems to me, will support Old Town very well because it will be much easier to walk into Old Town. And the city did work extensively with the Southwest Village Neighborhood Association, which represents the neighbors west of 68th Street. And as I understand, there were about 500 members in that association. So if you want to know whether the people in this area support it, the overwhelming number of the people who actually live here, and many of them spoke here tonight, actually support this project. The city's been working with these neighbors since 2019. It's responded to their concerns in part by adding the pedestrian street lights and making other pedestrian improvements. And finally, it's been said before, and this is so silly, frankly, I don't even know how to address it, but we're not trying to drive anybody out of their cars. If you want to drive a car, that's fine. I think Ms. Walsh made a great comment. She said, this is for drivers, it's for walkers, it's for bicyclists, it's for everybody. We're not trying to create any divisions here. In fact, we're trying to satisfy the people who live in this area and want this. So I'm going to be supporting this project. I think it's a great project. And those are my comments.
Thank you. Okay, so in 3 weeks, we'll all be up here. And we'll all be up here for a work study. And the subject will be CIP, Capital Improvement Projects. Part of the discussion will have to do with the Bond 2019 projects, disposition of funds, cost overloads, inflation, and also the other part will be very large discussion of the 5-year plan for our CIP. And we'll be sorting through reality, right? We're going to be looking at possible, every project, it may be, well, we discussed the fire and police training facility, okay? And that had major overruns. There's some things happening at Paiute. There's some things involving sidewalks and so forth. So all of those decisions, and some of them that we'll be looking at, won't even start design for 4 years. In other words, they're in a queue, they're in line, and they're projecting costs out, and they're going beyond, we're making many, many assumptions. One of the things that I do want to point out is that this project tonight is a outstanding contract, is a contract to get the job done. If approved, it's not a speculative estimate. It's not an estimate that we have to project 3 years ahead, add 25% on inflation to it, and cross our fingers, right? That's basically what happened in the 2019 bond. Nobody expected COVID. Nobody expected all the price escalations. So for me, as an architect or a planner or being mayor, I have to say, gee, how far off is this and how far off are the estimates? What I'm hearing from other discussions was the price of asphalt has been coming down. It may go up again, but we have something that's current and viable. The other question I asked engineering was, are we changing any driveways or sidewalks? The answer was no. The answer was no. We're not taking out a bunch of concrete, discovering pipelines, electrical problems, and so forth. So essentially, this project is a seal coat, micro seal. I don't want to say it's a repaving. They're not, but basically it's a standard upkeep every 7 years or whatever that may be. There would be an operation cost to freshen up that road, whether there's potholes, cracks, or whatever's occurring. So what we have is a scheduled maintenance of a necessary street. I have also Googled this street or Googled for directions. I don't see any Google direction to the airport saying, and go through 68th Street to get over one way or the other. I don't see that. I've checked it different times of the day. They're always saying, use the couplet, go to Thomas, and then cut west, or if the traffic's too hard, go the other direction. The other comparable, so it is ready to build with a certain level of confidence, okay? That's important to us. Now, the local, so if I were to say to any merchant along there or business along there, the results of this project from a construction standpoint, they're saying 4 to 5 months that's what they're saying, because I asked the question, but say 5 months, is basically a resealing of it. We're not tearing out your driveway. We're not changing the drive into the alley or whatever's occurring there. That's pretty important. I mean, that's a kind of basic question I asked. Last year, I got a call from a restaurant saying the city people are messing with my driveway. It was Cinco de Mayo, and they were a Mexican restaurant. Can you imagine that? I mean, it was a mess. And it was actually a vendor doing it in the fiber optics company. So it's ready to build. It's essentially no different than if paving has to be redone in your business neighborhood. And that gives me a certain level of confidence. Secondly, I have to rely on experts. And I say that, and one of my question to Ms. Timke is, did we get all those, the bike lanes south of Thomas or north of north of Camelback, did we get those without federal dollars? Now, I haven't asked that question, but basically I could have, and they could answer it. Whether they did or not, we have a certain cost, and we have a connectivity problem here. The question about ADA access, I did ask, what are the conditions of the ramps at the corners? And they said a lot of them are rough or they don't meet the ADA standard. Now, that means they don't have the little conical pad there, so someone would know. You've been testifying before. Thank you for being here, sir. And I just say that is a deficiency. That's a deficiency that, as a responsible party, I have to say, I got to fix that, right? And so that is part of, as well as the crossing aspect. Will it be safer for somebody to cross to the business across the street? It should be with these additional measures. The other aspect is when I look at the completion of Miller, which has churches, shopping centers, other kinds of businesses, that one has been completed under the same criteria with some bike lanes. It has been done. Now, I find that to be a rather peaceable drive there. I'm aware that there's really one lane and a turn lane in the center. There's also a median here and there that I got to get used to when there's a bump in the road. But basically, it has been successful, and I find that maybe the big trucks don't come off Miller. I would understand that. They would come off of maybe 76 or whatever that next street is past Miller. So the compatibility of what is occurring here versus, driving and then all of a sudden you got 4 lanes. Wow, I'm just going to pick it right up. Someone's in my way. That's the concern that I hear from the neighborhood. So the other part of this is I'm seeing that there is some parallel parking with the restriping. To me, that's additional parking spaces. I think that's accurate, and it's also accurate by having a 3-foot buffer. I've made the mistake of opening a door, and there might be a biker nearby. So I think that that's important to know, that you have that security where you have a parking space, the biker, and you've got a buffer there as well. So in terms of ready to build, essentially just restriping within the paving bounds of what's there, it makes sense from a value standpoint. And I'm also hearing that there should be more policing on 68th. And I hear that at the same time when I see that there's a 4-lane and a median in the way, and it's kind of a little drag strip in there. And that's a problem. So I believe that it is sensible or best practice. I also think that there is adequate, the rule is, pull over when you see the ambulance. I used to live there a short time when I was a bachelor in that area too, but I'm just saying that we heard the ambulances and going to Osborne Hospital. So it's a new world when we got the 101. And I was there when we cut the ribbon, and it was in 03, I believe. And at that point, these other supplemental roads were more significant. You can't imagine Scottsdale without the 101 access. In fact, the 101 has a new moniker. It says Scottsdale next 15 exits, right? And if you go south, it says Scottsdale next 15 exits. It's like a new name. We're still the most western town. So I really do respect that the individuals that are proposing this in the engineering side. I believe that the additional parking is good, and I also think that there will be some stacking when you get towards Indian School or Thomas. That means there's more cars ready to turn left or right. And that's what you would expect, but the volume, I don't believe will change appreciably. For that reason, I will support the motion. I think everyone has spoken, and if someone, I see Councilmember Graham, Whitehead, and Janik, so we'll continue the conversation or take a motion at any point as well. Go ahead. Councilmember Graham.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few additional comments and observations. We talked about the capacity on the roadway and where capacity was compared to volume, and it kind of seemed to be trending up, and then it went down in 2020. And so 2020, I think, was an outlier. I think it was misleadingly low. And I think that more data might show that this road is at greater capacity than, because that's the way it was trending before that. I wanted to respond to one thing, and I'm going to keep my comments brief because the hour is running late. There are strings attached to this, like Councilmember Durham said. If there weren't strings attached to it, we could spend it any way we wanted. That's just what that means. But we can't. We have to spend it the way the conditions require. Those are strings. And so, I would love for us to be able to receive the money and add some crosswalks for the pedestrians for the neighborhood just to the west, and maybe a little bit of more paint or some sort of compromise, just getting away from this us versus them. I think that as far as Begg Bakery, to say that your business is going to be great is speculation. The reality is that we sit up here and we're going to do this to your street, and we don't have to pay the consequence if we're wrong. So we're going to go forward with it, and and that's what will happen. I also think it's an immutable fact that this will push more traffic onto 64th Street, Goldwater, and Scottsdale Road. The cars aren't going anywhere. They're just going to be pushed. And we already know, and we talked about how those are at a very high capacity as it is. And I disagree with the premise that the neighborhood next to it uniformly and exuberantly supports it. I think if you dug a little more into that in a granular level, they would say it would be more mixed. And we've already heard a lot of them don't support it. And it would be more mixed and say, well, we don't need from what I heard, the most important thing was the crosswalks. And crosswalks from that neighborhood, Southwest neighborhood, a lot different than eliminating lanes. So those are just paradigmatically different. So I think if you drill down to that, you'll see a little more. So with that, Mayor, thank you for allowing me the opportunity.
Thank you. Next, Councilwoman Whitehead, Councilwoman Janik.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to point out a couple things, and then I'm going to motion to approve this item. Council's not qualified to engineer this project. We have professional staff that's tasked with implementing our priorities, and our priorities and policy direction is to make Scottsdale safer, to improve traffic flow, and to save tax dollars. This checks all those boxes. I also want to say that we're not reducing a lane to put in a bike lane. We're not taking away a car lane for a bike lane. What we're doing is reconfiguring a road. We're making it so that people can turn right and turn left without being in the lane that is moving traffic. Same with the trolley. So this is a reconfiguration, and the bike lane, which is an obvious addition, is kind of a side benefit, which I might want to point out also that 6% of the total cost is the restripings for the bike lane. If this proved to be dangerous for ambulances, again, we would know about this because the entire length of 68th Street is already 2 lanes, but if it was, then it's a matter of $80,000 when you repave it to restripe it back to 4 lanes. There is no loss of width of road here, no infrastructure changes. So with that, I just really wanted to share the fact that I know we all want to make this perfect for everyone. That's not how it works, and we're not qualified to do it, but I think our staff did an exemplary job. Not only that, unlike any other city in the valley or any other city that I've ever lived in, we respond to everyone. If you have a complaint, if you have a concern, if you have a question, we're there for you. And we're there for you before we vote. We're there for you after we vote on a project. This is just a fabulous city, and that's why we have such good reviews when it comes to customer service. So with that, I motion to adopt agenda item 19, 68th Street, Indian School Road to Thomas Road construction bid, and request that we adopt resolution number 12733 to authorize construction bid award number IFB 092022-024 with AJP Electric Inc. in the amount of $1,455,668.10 for the construction of the 68th Street Indian School Road to Thomas Road project SG02. The acceptance of federal grant awards in the amount of $615,243 in congestion mitigation air quality funds, $286,844 in congestion mitigation air quality funds, and $583,849 in transportation alternative funds for a total amount of $485,936. The payment of the local contribution requirement of $89,819 with transportation sales tax. A fiscal year 2022-23 Transportation Fund Capital Contingency Budget Appropriation transfer of up to $92,159 to the 68th Street Indian School to Thomas Road Capital Improvement Plan project to be funded by the Transportation 0.2% sales tax, and the city manager and city treasurer or designees to take such actions and execute such documents as necessary to carry out the intent of this resolution.
Second.
I see Councilwoman Janik.
Yes, Ellison, I want clarification on one point. $89,000 will come from transportation tax. Then you said 92,000. Did it go from 89 to 92, or did it go from 89 plus 92? I was confused on that.
Mayor, Councilwoman Janik, so we already have the $89,000 in our budget. It's already there. We're asking for the additional 92.
So it will be it'll be over 180,000 from transportation.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So some of the council members misunderstood that when they were commenting.
Thank you. And any other comments? Please record your vote. Okay. The motion carries 4-3.